All right, let's go ahead and get started. I know we've got a lot to cover. We want to make sure there's a lot of time for questions so that we can dive into those as well. So thanks everyone for joining. My name is Dr. Rebecca Mears, a member of the VIN Foundation Student Debt Education team. I'm going to be in the background helping to answer some questions, chiming in with your most upvoted questions during the talk. Jordan Benchia, Executive Director of the VIN Foundation, will be helping out with that as well. We try to keep the chat for any like technical issues, or sometimes Tony will ask some questions and want some responses in the chat. So we try to keep that free for those things. For any of your questions, go ahead and use the Q&A function. That'll also allow you to ask questions anonymously if you prefer. In addition, you can upvote those questions in the Q&A. And by upvoting, if you've got that same question, that helps us to kind of focus in on what are the questions that it seems like the most people have, and be able to make sure that we're hitting those as quickly as possible and getting to those live. So feel free to drop those into that Q&A. And with that, I'm just going to remind everybody that yes, we are recording this, and the recording will be sent out to everyone that registered, as well as some other helpful information, follow-up information. And we'll have that out as soon as we can. It's usually within the next couple of days. So we'll have that out to you as well. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tony and let's get started.
Thank you, Rebecca, and welcome everyone. Thanks again for joining and submitting a lot of those great registration concerns and questions. I've been threatening, as I do for all of these, that we're going to do them a little differently. And tonight I'm actually going to try to keep myself to that. I'm really going to try to illustrate the tools that we use to help determine how to make sense of the forgiveness count adjustment, and also which repayment plans that you should be using, selecting, knowing if you're in the right one, those sorts of things. Because the reality is here, I don't know how many times we're going to keep getting extensions of these deadlines, right? This is now the what are we at, the second or third final forgiveness count opportunity here. And with just a couple of weeks before the end of the deadline, and with summer schedules and everything, I can't guarantee that Becca and I are going to be able to personally answer every one of your questions, right? So this is going to be kind of a help yourself kind of thing. We're here to guide you through the process and answer your questions, and I really want to get more to the live questions. But in order to answer those questions that you guys have, we're going to need to know a little bit about your student loans, which means you're going to have to know a little bit about your student loans, right? So I'm going to really try to hone in on what that means, and how you can make sense of this using the tools that we have available. I also, I'm going to share with you just kind of, we're going to do a little bit more peeking behind the curtain tonight than we probably normally do, right? And here's some of the submissions for the registration for the webinar, right? And your primary concerns alongside your grad year. And there are a lot of grad years that are, a little bit removed from vet school, let's say, right? So when I see these ones in the 90s, right, your loans should probably be gone, right? Which tells me that maybe you haven't consolidated them yet, or they're not in the right status to receive the loan forgiveness, right? So, we want to make sure that those of you that have been in repayment for 25 years have the loans in the correct position to receive the forgiveness count that people have been receiving, right? This is a real thing. Many of our colleagues have already received and seen their loans forgiven, right? But your loans have to be in the right status, the right type of student loans to receive this forgiveness. And when I'm seeing, people that have loans and they're still in the 90s, that tells me that you probably haven't done what you need to do with your loans to make them eligible for forgiveness. Those of you that are, kind of in that early 2000s, you're really, really, really close, as long as your loans are in the correct status. And maybe your loans will be forgiven. It depends on how much repayment time you have on some of those loans, maybe before you started for vet school. So that's going to be the first focus, is making sure that everybody understands the forgiveness count adjustment, what status your loans need to be in, what types of loans you have, and which ones you need to have in order to be considered for the forgiveness count adjustment. And then ultimately, for the rest of us, do you need to consolidate, or are you set and just need to wait to receive your count? And then we could talk about what happens after you receive your count and how much or what repayment plans you should be using to reach forgiveness. But, again, there's a lot of early grad years here that registered for this webinar. And we want to make sure that everybody here has the right loan types to receive that count adjustment. And then maybe some of you will actually see your loans forgiven sooner rather than later. So we'll focus there first, and then we'll move on to the phase outs, because the phase outs apply to those that still have some repayment time remaining, right? So your phase outs, we're going to lose a couple of repayment options. That only is pertinent for those of you that actually have repayment time remaining, right? And if one of those plans happens to be one of the plans they're going to do to be phased out, happen to be one of the plans that you could benefit from, you want to make sure that you're applied for it or in it before they actually disappear, right? So that's kind of the goals for tonight, right? Making sure everybody's on the same page with their forgiveness count. How can you tell? And then looking at your repayment options for those of us that still have some repayment time before forgiveness is granted. So your federal student loans are the most flexible but annoying debt you'll ever have. I mean, if you're here tonight, you probably have figured out they're at least the most annoying, but they are the most flexible debt you'll ever have. Right now, I mean, they keep changing things. Thankfully, those changes have been for the better, but it is difficult to make sense of all this. So just to give you kind of a high-level overview, the one-time forgiveness count adjustment, that deadline for at least having a new consolidation loan considered under that count adjustment was extended again. The previous deadlines were at the end of 2023, then it got extended to the end of April, and then sometime a couple of weeks into May, it was extended again to the end of this month. Right now, who knows what's going to happen when we get to the end of this month. At some point, these extensions will end, which means you want to take advantage of the remaining time you have to make sure that if you haven't consolidated already and you can benefit from doing so, that you actually get your consolidation application submitted before this new June 30th deadline. And then the day after that, that's when they're going to start phasing out repayment options, right? So, this will be the first time we've seen income-driven repayment options removed from the suite of available repayment options. History might suggest that we could see an extension of that deadline, but you really can't count on that, right? So if pay-as-you-earn or income contingent repayment, which is what ICR stands for, is the best repayment option for you to be in, then you want to make sure that you've at least applied for it before that July 1st phase-out date, so you have a chance of using that plan. What the phase outs mean is that anybody who's using those plans when that plan is phased out can keep using them, right? But after that date, if you're not in it, you won't be able to select it. Right now, I don't know if they'll be able to get your loans into one of those plans if you apply today by July 1st, but chances are, if you have some documentation that says, hey, I applied for, pay as you earn on June 12th or 13th, they'll still let you in, even if it takes them longer than 2 weeks to process that application, right? So we're just trying to make sure that everybody who has a reason to either consolidate or use one of these plans that are being phased out understands that it might be something helpful for you to use. And if you're going to apply for it, you apply for it for those phase out, before those phase out dates or that consolidation deadline, so you have the best chance of using it. And that's what's going to lead us into, well, what is the best plan, right? Well, it depends. It depends on your remaining balance, your income, if you're married, your spouse, how you file your taxes, all these other things that we'll dive into the loan repayment simulator to see if we can get some better answers to. Okay. Oh, so here, I wanted to kick this off, kind of remind me. So this is an email that we received today, right? So this is not uncommon. This has been, for the last 3 years, has been kind of like, hey, I don't know what's going on. Can you help me, right? So 2009 graduate, trying to understand my options for consolidation. I have 2 direct consolidation loans, 1 Stafford sub, 1 Stafford unsub, and another consolidated loan by Union Bank Trust, FHLB. Should I consolidate everything? I don't know, right? I can't, this is not enough information for Becca and I to answer this question, right? We have to know the names of your loans, right? So we know that there's at least 2 direct consolidation loans here, which is great, but Stafford sub and Stafford unsub is not sufficient enough. That could be a direct loan, that could be a federal family education loan, and this Union Bank Trust, I've never heard of this, right? This is probably a private loan, which means you can't consolidate those together, right? So the only way that we can tell is by seeing your federal student aid data file, or by you uploading your federal student aid data file into the VIN Foundation Student Debt Center My Student Loans tool, right? The My Student Loans tool is the tool that we use to look at your student loans to answer these exact kinds of questions, right? So that's where we have to have kind of that minimum database, if you will. If we think about our student loans as a clinical case, right? The minimum database we need to really evaluate you, the patient, is your student aid data file, right? And we have ways of knowing whether or not you've uploaded your student aid data file, right? So for veterinarians who have ever been a member of VIN and have a username and password, if you're logged into VIN with your username and password and you upload your student aid data file, Becca and I can see that data, right? Now for this person, this is a veterinarian, they weren't logged in when they uploaded their student aid data file, or they haven't done that yet. I can't see that information, right? So we have to go back and request that information from this person so we can see that minimum database and better answer that question, right? So again, help you, help yourself, help us, right? Because the more time we have to spend kind of chasing down that data is the less time we have to actually answer questions over on the student debt message board or respond to these emails, right? So let's talk about how you can get your student aid data file, where you're going to put that student aid data file, and then how the message boards work too, right? Because there's some of you that probably have done all that and are maybe waiting a reply, right? So, you know, we're working our way through all of that to try to help direct you, but we really want to make sure that you understand how all of this works as well.
Excellent question. What if we aren't VIN members?
Yeah, if you're not a VIN member, all right, as long as you're a veterinarian, right, and you've had a VIN username and password in the past, we can still get you some help through VIN Foundation, right? So even if you don't have an active VIN membership, if you still have your VIN username and password, then you can use that, right? And it'll still let you log in and upload your student aid data file. And we can give you access to the student debt message boards via VIN Foundation. Right. And if you don't have any credentials, then you can apply for a username and password through VIN Foundation using what we call the VIN Foundation application. Right. So if you maybe you had a VIN membership as a student or some point in your veterinary career and you're no longer an active VIN member, you're still in the system. Right. So that VIN username and password will still work to get the student debt help, right? As long as you remember that password, right? And if you don't remember the password, you can reset your password and it'll send that information to your email. Now, if that, again, kind of falls apart, you can email us and we'll try to reestablish that, or you can try that VIN Foundation application link. All right, so the student loan physical exam. This is what we're looking for, right? So we're trying to piece together, all of those, I've got consolidation loans. Okay, well, that's really not enough, right? What type of consolidation loan is it? Is it a direct consolidation loan? Is a federal family education loan or a FFEL consolidation loan? Is it some other type of private consolidation loan? Those are the questions that we need to answer to help you understand whether or not you need to act before the end of this month. Right, and we may also find some Perkins loans, health profession student loans, loans for disadvantaged students. That's all helpful information too, because if we see balances for those, that's another trigger that you should really be consolidating your loans, because then you can get those to count towards forgiveness as well, right? So knowing what those loan details are is really, really important. Private loans are going to be anything that really doesn't fall into this category, right? So thinking back to that email that we received today, that Union Bank, that's probably a private loan, right? And private loans are not included in any of these special federal student loan benefits, right? You're not able to consolidate a private loan into a federal student loan, right? So unfortunately, you're going to have to take care of those outside of the benefits that are available for your federal student loans. Right, so your private student loans are going to have a contract, a master promissory note associated with them that are going to govern how you have to pay those back. Right. And if you wanted to change the terms of a private loan, you would have to, refinance that or consolidate that with a different private loan that hopefully would have better terms. Right. But your federal student loans, because there's a bunch of different types that fall under the federal student loan universe, you are able to put all of those different federal student loan types into a federal direct consolidation loan. And those are the loans that the direct loans are the ones that receive the maximum amount of benefits, at least with all of the current programs that are out there now, right? So we're really looking to see if we can help you get any of your different types of federal student loans into a direct consolidation loan, if it makes sense to do so, and if it makes sense to do so before the end of this month, get that application submitted. If you've lost track of anything and you're really not sure if you're looking at your student aid data file or you're logged into your loan servicer account, you know that you have more student loans than you can see there, then you may want to check a credit report and check it from all the major reporting entities. You'll see all of your open lines of credit, or at least as many of them live in that credit reporting universe, and you can check those for free at annualcreditreport.com. The federal student aid data file, let's take a peek and see how we can find that, right? Because this is kind of the core of doing that student loan exam, right? So studentaid.gov, if you're not familiar with this is where you have to go. If you've ever had federal student loans in your history, you'll have an account with federal student aid, right? And if you have that account information, you can log in, or if you need to, you can reactivate that account. Now, if you have to reactivate that account, unfortunately, sometimes it can take a few days for that information to come through. So you may not be able to log in, tonight while we're doing this, but at least you want to get that process started so you can get in there as soon as you possibly can. All right, so I'm going to log in with my information here. It's going to send me a code to my phone. It's usually pretty fast. There it is. I'm going to accept that. All right, so this is going to take me to essentially my dashboard. Okay, so forget that they want to know where you are and what your personal information is and confirm it pretty much every time you log in now, which is good. It's annoying when I do demos, but I have verified my information with the Department of Education about 1,000 times this year. So they're probably starting to wonder why I'm in here so frequently. Okay, so apparently you've got some new data here too. So anywho, this is the dashboard, right? This shows you, the overview, how much student loans you have in total, right? And it shows me who my loan servicer is. And if I had more than one loan servicer, which is not uncommon, you'll see them listed here. But that's not enough information for me to actually make any decision. And this is not the file that I need, right? So I have to hit this view details button. And when I get into the details here, you're going to see a download my aid data, right? This is what you need, right? So we're going to ask you to download your aid data. So you click on the button. There's going to be a lot of scary language here. It's going to download this information in this ugly looking text file, right? TXT file. Keep it in that format, right? You can open it if you want, but I advise against it. It's just going to make your eyes cross and your head spin, right? But the text file, it contains all of your ugly historical federal student loan history. And, that's the data that we need to help answer your questions, right? So after you have your federal student aid data file, that's where you're going to head over to the VIN Foundation My Student Loans tool, right? So VIN Foundation My Student Loans, publicly available website, right? You don't have to have any kind of username and password to use these tools. Anybody can use these and everybody does use them, but it's specifically designed for veterinarians and veterinary students, right? So this is the My Student Loans page, right? So if you're in the student debt center or universe and you ever get lost, the My Student Loans link is right up here in the nav bar at the top, right? So you can click on the My Student Loans page. If you've graduated from vet school, you've got that student aid data file, right? This is where you're going to upload it. Right now, you may have seen, and I thought it might actually trigger because I hadn't been poking around on VIN in a little while, so I thought it might have logged me out. But it'll probably ask you, if you're not logged into VIN already today, when you go to the My Student Loans page, it's going to pop up a message that will ask you to log in, right? If you have your username and password, that's where you'll enter it, right? So it knows here that I'm logged into VIN, right? And it's pulling my information that it has on file for me for my name here in the little status bar up here, right? So that's my VIN profile, if you will. And if I hit manage profile, it'll take me to my VIN profile. When you're logged in to the Student Debt Center, right, it'll keep your file in here, right? So you can see I've got a few files uploaded, right? If you log in and you upload your file, it'll keep track and you'll be able to access at least the last 3 files that you've uploaded. It'll also give you a link to the student debt message board area, right? So the student debt message board area is where we do a lot of the personalized question answering when we're not doing these webinars, right? There are thousands of these posts in here, right? This is kind of where all the experience comes from, right? And if you're a regular VIN user, you know that the message boards are kind of where you get a lot of the information for the clinical questions that you have in veterinary medicine, right? So the same concept applies, right? We're trying to help you answer your questions on your student loans, which will hopefully help other members of the community get the answers that they need, but it also gives us that experience that we can pass along to you so we can develop some best practices when it comes to repaying your student loans, right? So you'll see tons of different questions regarding, various repayment options for different types of veterinarians, no matter when they graduated, where they went to school, all live in here, right? And you can post anonymously in here. So there's a lot of different threads. Some of them are longer than others. Again, just to illustrate, you have this option of posting anonymously. Becca and I know who you are, but the rest of the community doesn't, right? So if you upload your student aid data file, you post a question in here, we can see all that information. We can better answer your questions rather than just talking about them in generalities. All right, so I'm going to upload a file, kind of show you an example, right? And one of the examples that I have, what I consider the running to consolidate examples, right? So people that really, really, really need to act, right? So here's one of those 1999 veterinarians. We're going to talk a lot about what I call income-driven repayment profiles tonight, right? There's 4 of them that you can possibly be in. And if you see this pop up when you upload your student aid data file, you're in one of those groups that needs to run to the consolidation application, right? Because you have the loan types that fall outside of the forgiveness count adjustment consideration, but you can still be considered as long as you get the consolidation application submitted before the end of this month. Right, so we have this alert set up in the background here to trigger whenever we identify these privately held FFEL program loans. Right, so some old precursors to the direct loan program, because they were kind of a mixture of federal and private loans, they can't directly apply some of these benefits, but if you consolidate them, bring them into the direct loan universe, then they can be, they can receive things like the one-time forgiveness count adjustment or be eligible for some of the more beneficial repayment options that are out there. Right, so upload that student aid data file and look for this loan alert, right? So if you get that, this person is in what I call IDR profile 4, right? And what does that mean, right? So I can see that they used to have direct loans, right? But their remaining balance all falls into this Federal Family Education Loan or FFEL loan bucket, right? And they've got 10 of those left, or actually it looks like there's only 1 with a balance, right? And it's with Navient, who only services these privately held FFELs anymore, right? So that's kind of a trigger, right? Navient, in this case, as a loan servicer, helps to indicate that this is not one of these favorable loan types we need to consolidate, right? But I'm also missing Department of Ed, right? And I'll show you a different example of that in just a little bit. When you upload a student aid data file and you click on the loan servicer tab, if you see Department of Ed ahead of whatever the name that follows, which is a loan servicer, that means it's a federally held loan, and that's a good thing, right? But so this one is in IDR profile 4. So what does that mean? When you're on the income-driven repayment eligibility tab, you're going to see numbers associated with the various income-driven repayment options that are out there, right? In this instance, this person's only eligible for the old version of IBR, right? And this only happens, this constellation of reporting in the income-driven repayment eligibility tool only happens if you have all FFEL program loans remaining, right? If this is you, right? If you see 100% for IBR 2009, you are in income-driven repayment eligibility profile 4, you should be running to consolidate your loans, right? You have to consolidate your loans if you want to be considered for the forgiveness count adjustment. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? So consolidate your loans before the end of June 30th. This is probably the most straightforward of any of the profiles in terms of what we can definitively say, yes, you need to act, right? The rest of them get a little more fuzzy. All right, and so just this week, or maybe it was last week, put out a commentary on VIN News where we talked about these IDR profiles, right? And here's just some generalities, right? If you graduated vet school 2010 or earlier, then you might be in IDR profile 4, right? And then we'll cover. I'll just keep making my way up. So IDR profile 3, I'll show you an example of what I have there, right? So I'm going to open up a new My Student Loans tab, and I'm going to upload a different sample of somebody who is in IDR profile 3. And these are people who graduated, sometime after, usually, again, guidelines. These are just some guidelines. Everybody has kind of a irregular path to and through veterinary school. So the graduation years are just guidelines. But if you finished veterinary school 2012 or later, then you could be in IDR profile 3. So here's an example of that one. So again, we didn't see the alert that told us that we had FFEL program loans, but we do see a renewal alert in here, which pertains to an anniversary date, which if you're using an income-driven repayment plan, you will have an anniversary date, which indicates when you next need to provide updated income information to keep that payment calculated based on your income. Right, so we're making sure that we highlight these renewal dates. Most of them are in the future, right? Nobody has an anniversary date or should have an anniversary date that's before November 1st of this year. Right, now, some of the files haven't quite updated yet, but nobody is technically required to provide any additional income information before that November 1st deadline, unless you can get a lower payment. If you can get a lower payment, then you can apply now. This person has $175,000 of student loans remaining. They graduated in 2015. Right? They have, again, Department of Ed here ahead of their loan servicer name, which is Nelnet. Right? So that's a good thing. That tells us that their loans are eligible to receive the forgiveness count adjustment. If I look to see what the remaining loan types are, I see that they're direct consolidated loans. One unsubsidized, one subsidized. This is an example of what we consider to be fully consolidated, right? If you have only direct consolidated loans remaining with the same date, right? You might have two subtypes, right? One unsubsidized, one subsidized. Your loans are considered to be fully consolidated, right? So there's nothing left for you to do in terms of the forgiveness count adjustment. The forgiveness count adjustment will be applied to this consolidation loan, taking into account all of this person's history, and that count will be assigned sometime between now and September 1st. Right, so there's nothing for this person to do in terms of the consolidation, right? And what does that look like in terms of income-driven repayment eligibility, right? So if you're eligible for the old version of IBR, what we call IBR 2009, and save, which used to be called repay, right? And you see zeros for pay as you earn in the new version of IBR, this is IDR profile 3. Right? And this also suggests that you should be using the new save repayment plan, right? Because save has effectively made the old version of IBR obsolete. So this is, again, just kind of working through what is our student aid data file telling us? Do we need to consolidate in this case? No, because the loans are already fully consolidated and in a direct consolidation loan. Which repayment plan is this person using? If it says repay, it means save, right? Because repay was updated to the new save plan back in October, right? But the files are still showing repay, right? Repay and save are equivalent currently until they actually update all of that information in the files. We also see what the minimum monthly payment is, right? We already know that that anniversary date is August of 2025, right? So this minimum monthly payment will persist in repay, i.e. save, for more than another year, right? So this person's in some pretty good shape, right? They're using the most beneficial income-driven plan that they possibly can. They've got a very favorable payment for more than a year. They'll get their forgiveness count adjustment sometime by September. And at that point, you can reassess, what does that forgiveness path look like for them? We get asked a lot, how do I know how much forgiveness time I have? Right now, it's just kind of a guess, right? So ballpark guidelines, graduated in 2025, you're going to receive, in this case, close to 9 years of repayment time. If I go back and look at the history of all of the different loans that they had, do I see any potential for additional years of payments beyond when they graduated veterinary school? In this case, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I see a break between 2009 and 2011. So maybe there was a year of repayment time extra. Doesn't really matter at this point. They're all fully consolidated. They're going to get the maximum count that they can get. So maybe it's going to be 9 years, maybe it's going to be 10 years, right? So that's the best guess that we can do just based on the loan history, right? You don't get any repayment credit for in-school time, right? But if you had some loans from before vet school and maybe it was a couple of years before you started vet school and those older loans were in repayment for a couple of years, if you consolidate those older loans with the vet school loans, you can get that additional couple of years added to your overall repayment count, which will equal forgiveness credit, right? So that's the benefit of consolidating before the June 30th deadline, is to maximize that count adjustment and to convert any of those older FEL program loans, right? This person used to have those FEL loans, but they've since been consolidated into a new direct consolidation loan. That direct consolidation loan is fully consolidated, will receive the maximum count adjustment when that count is applied. Right, and this is IDR profile 3. All right, IDR profile 2, otherwise known as the pickle, right, includes pay-as-you-earn eligibility. Right, and the only people that can be eligible for pay-as-you-earn is somebody who graduated from vet school in 2012 or later, right, based on when pay-as-you-earn started and the rules that require you to be a new borrower to meet the pay-as-you-earn eligibility requirements. Right, so let's look at IDR profile 2. Right, so I'm going to open a new My Student Loans tab. I'm going to upload a student aid data file that has that IDR profile 2. This one. All right, again, so we didn't see that FEL alert indicating that you had some active FEL balance that could benefit from consolidation, but we are seeing a anniversary date, right, which tells me that this person's using an income-driven repayment plan. That anniversary date is December 15th of this year, right? So not as far off in the future as the last one, but still pretty good. So this person also has some health profession student loans, right? Now that's something that you won't see in your student aid data file, right? This is one of those things where somebody tells us, well, I've actually got $200,000 of student loans, but your file only shows 170 because the remaining 30 is a loan type, a federal student loan type that doesn't exist in the student aid data file, right? So if I know that, then I'm going to add those loans to this, right? In this case, this person actually has $20,000 of health profession student loans, right? So I'm going to add those loans there. The servicer, I'm not, it could be Heartland or ECSI, depending on who has that. Let's just give them a school, right? Those health profession student loans are always at 5%, right? They can be included in a consolidation. This is a great time to do that because if you consolidate those health profession student loans with your existing loans, even though you graduated, in this case, 10 years ago, that balance that you add to the consolidation loan will receive the 10 years of repayment time you've already logged. Right? So you're not going to reset your repayment time. You'll actually add additional balance to it that absorbs that existing repayment time that you currently have. Right. So this person, especially if you've got, $20,000 of health profession student loans remaining, this would be a great time to consolidate all of those loans. Right. So you can add that additional balance because by itself, this is not eligible for an income-driven repayment plan. It's on a separate standard 10-year plan. So you're making two separate payments, one to your direct loans, another one to your health profession student loans. And if you're likely to hit forgiveness, you want to get as much of your balance as possible into that consolidation loan, and you're not going to reset that forgiveness time. So that balance will now be included in your income-driven plan payment and take on that existing repayment time that you've already earned. Right. So this is a good one where somebody could benefit from consolidating, even though most of their loans are all direct loans. So if I come over to the income-driven repayment eligibility tab, after I've added in that health profession student loan, I can see I've got various numbers in the different available income-driven repayment options, right? Pay as you earn, but not the new version of IBR. This puts me in IDR profile 2. Right now, pay as you earn is also one of the options that's going to be phased out on July 1st, right? And this person is using revised pay as you earn, otherwise known as SAVE, right? If this person wants to use pay as you earn for their new consolidation balance, then they're going to have to apply for that during their consolidation loan and submit that before the deadline to have a chance at using pay as you earn before it's phased out. And this balance is kind of in that range where we see pay as you earn is probably going to be more beneficial than save, particularly if you've already got 10 years of time logged in repayment, right? So you're going to be closer to forgiveness. So let me back up a second. So pay as you earn, the difference between pay as you earn and save. Pay as you earn has a shorter time to forgiveness for people with graduate school loans, i.e. anybody who went to veterinary school, right? Veterinary school is considered graduate school. Graduate school loans have some different rules in repayment when it comes to forgiveness than having all undergraduate loans. So pay as you earn allows you to reach forgiveness at 20 years. Save requires you to be in repayment for 25 years. Now, Save has some benefits to it that are a little bit better than pay as you earn, but for some people and for some outcomes, pay as you earn is a better choice over Save. You reach forgiveness sooner, you may pay less in total, right? And for some people, they want to be done with their student loans before, in a shorter time frame than Save provides, right? If that's the case for you, you want to select pay as you earn before the end of this month, because then it's going to be phased out, right? And once it's phased out, if you're not in it, which this person's not, they're not going to be able to select it, even though they're technically eligible for it. right? And that's what makes this IDR profile 2 the pickle, right? It's a tough call. And especially with only a couple of weeks left, you have to make that decision. Do I forego pay as you earn, or do I choose it before the phase out date, right? But better to have that decision and do some analysis and make it kind of an active decision on your part, as opposed to just kind of losing access to it, right? I mean, if this person doesn't know anything about this and they just continue on and revise pay as you earn on July 1st, revise pay as you earn it is, right? You're not going to have access to pay as you earn any longer. Right, so run those numbers, and that's where we use the loan repayment simulator, right? So how do I compare whether or not save or pay is better for me, right? So that's where I'm going to send this information over to the simulator, right? And because we're going to encourage this person to consolidate their loans, we're going to choose the consolidation option. One of the side effects of consolidating is it will take your unpaid interest and add it to your principal, right? But that if you're going to add balance to it, or you're going to add forgiveness time to your loans, or you're going to convert FELs into a direct consolidation loan that's eligible for the forgiveness count adjustment, don't worry about the unpaid interest capitalization, right? It's just part of the process, and it's going to be more helpful to do all of those other things than to not consolidate just to avoid the unpaid interest capitalization. Years of repayment, this person has at least 10 years in repayment, right? So we're going to make sure that we add that years in repayment to our best guess of what we're going to receive in forgiveness time, right? This is a really common mistake that people that share simulation links on the message boards, where they're analyzing the repayment options, they're like, I'm not really sure which repayment plan to choose. First step is to make sure that you account for the amount of time that you've already logged, right? Because that will have a significant impact on your simulation, right? So we want to make sure that we count those years in repayment. On our consolidation loans, if we're using the auto pay feature, we can also subtract off 0.25% from our interest rate for a discount. So 6.3 here in this example. Now here, we have to guesstimate our what our payments are going to be, right? So that's based off your income, right? Taxable income is the best input to put in here. So pull up your most recently filed tax return, look for the adjusted gross income item on there. As long as that number is less than or equal to your current income, put that income in here, right? So let's just put something in there, right? Depending on how you're paid will determine largely how you assume your income is going to grow over time, but you're going to know that best just based on your income history. If you're married, you'll add that information in here. Yes, no, not yet. If it's imminent, you can put the date you're going to be married. If you have dependents or you have children that will be born in the next 12 months, you can add them as family members for student loan repayment purposes. That's all accounted for in the income-driven repayment calculations. If you're planning for forgiveness, right, we want to assume some kind of tax rate on that forgiveness. And if you have an active fund that you're building to pay that potential tax, then you want to indicate what type of return you're earning on your forgiveness savings fund, right? And if you have some dedicated amount already allocated for that, enter it in there, and we'll factor that in as well. You run the simulation here, right? In this case, this person is currently using save, would reach forgiveness in 15 years from now. But if they switch to pay when they consolidate, they'd hit forgiveness at 10 years, right? This is pretty compelling evidence that pay as you earn is maybe a better option, right? Without going into a lot of really ugly details, this remaining balance amount considered against their income, right? So their debt to income ratio suggests that pay as you earn will generate a more favorable outcome than save, right? The higher your debt to income ratio gets, the more it favors save, right? In this case, I mean, there's a sizable difference, $50,000 difference in the projected total cost, provided our income assumptions are reasonable, right? So I'm probably going to steer this person into pay as you earn. right? And that, but the side effect of reaching forgiveness sooner is the tax is probably going to be a little bit higher, and you're going to have to come up with that money sooner rather than later, right? So your forgiveness planning fund is a little bit more burdensome than if you stuck with a plan like Save that gives you an extra 5 years to plan for it, right? So this is, again, why we call it the pickle. The pickle is really, it's tough. It's tough to actually come up with a definitive answer in terms of what should you use, right? So when we start with the numbers, how does this look, right? Is this scary to think about this tax and this amount to dedicate towards a fund that you'll use to potentially pay this tax later on down the road? If not, then go for it, right? If it does, then there's nothing wrong with sticking with Save. Just know that you're going to lose access to pay as you earn when you're in this particular profile, IDR profile 2, aka the pickle. And this is how you run that simulation to tell. But again, and the reason why I don't spend a lot of time talking about non-income driven repayment options, because look at how much more beneficial this is compared to just trying to pay the balance to zero quickly, right? It's not even close, right? So the income driven plans, particularly when you have a robust amount of forgiveness time credited to you, are extremely beneficial, right? And a lot of people have a lot of really robust forgiveness time coming to them because of the forgiveness count adjustment and how they're counting all of that past repayment time, right? So, it's really imperative that you take a close look at your student loans, know which income-driven repayment profile you're in, right? And run some simulations to see what that outcome is likely to be, counting for the number of years you're likely to receive in forgiveness. All right, let's round out the profiles. I'm going to do IDR profile 1, which is the most flexible of them. And this is mostly for newer graduates, right? So anybody who has graduated 2018 or sooner is likely going to be in that IDR profile 1. IDR profile 1. And this is a really good illustration because this particular person is using pay as you earn, which was probably a good move when they graduated, but with all of the changes means that they should be thinking about moving or pay as you earn into Save. So this person's in IDR profile 1, right? Again, we've got Department of Ed ahead of our loan servicer. In this case, it's Ed Financial. That tells me that they're all federally held. In this case, all the loans are direct loans, right? We've got 9 of them remaining. I'm going to sort them by date because for me, that's the easiest way to look for breaks in the borrowing history, right? But they graduated in 2019. They attended a 4-year veterinary program. They started borrowing in 2015, graduated in 2019. This is what it looks like if you only have loans from veterinary school, right? And in this case, they don't need to consolidate, right? If you only have loans from veterinary school, right, and they're all direct loans that are remaining, there's no need for this person to consolidate. They can, but it's not going to change how much forgiveness time that they have, and it's going to capitalize their unpaid interest balance. In this case, if you can avoid it, do it, right? Because there's nothing for you to gain by consolidating. Right? You'll still be eligible for the same constellation of income-driven plans. It's not going to change the amount of forgiveness time you have. And the only thing it will do is capitalize your unpaid interest, right? In that case, there's no need to consolidate your loans, right? So this is a good illustration of that. I also see that they're using the pay-as-you-earn repayment plan with a minimum monthly payment of $350, which they have all the way until next August of 2025, which is really beneficial, right? Which is cool. So maybe, and I mentioned that it would be helpful if this person gets out of pay and goes into Save, but maybe they stay in pay as you earn to benefit from that really low monthly payment and switch to Save the next time they have to renew, which is quite far off in the future for them, right? So strategically, we eventually want to get this person in the save, but it may not make sense to do it right away. It might just make more sense to do it when they're next due to renew. Right, so income-driven repayment eligibility, IDR profile 1, what does that look like? It looks like you're eligible for pay-as-you-earn, save, and the new version of IBR. Right, and when you're eligible for the new version of IBR and pay are nearly identical. Right, so the pay-as-you-earn phase-out means much less for somebody who's still eligible for a plan that looks just like pay-as-you-earn. Right, pay-as-you-earn and the new version of IBR have the same time to forgiveness as well, 20 years, right, which is really helpful. Right, so you still have a 20-year forgiveness option if you're eligible for the new version of IBR. Why would we then want them to get their loans into save? Because save will generate a lower monthly payment compared to IBR or pay, and it also provides a 100% unpaid interest subsidy. Right, so this person is accruing $1,653 per month of interest. Their minimum monthly payment is $350. That means they're falling short by $1,300 a month of interest. That's where all of this is coming from. Right, pay as you earn, the new version of IBR, the old version of IBR, they do not have unpaid interest subsidies, which means you get charged all of the interest that your payment's not covering. Right, you don't get charged additional interest on this interest unless it gets added to the principal, but you still have this unpaid interest which adds to your balance. Right, save will cover the difference between your monthly payment and the interest that is accruing. Right, so in this case, you're $1,300 short on your interest. The Department of Education will cover that $1,300, which means you won't see this unpaid interest balance grow any further if you use save. That's the incentive to use save while your monthly payment is less than the monthly interest. The kicker is, in order to receive forgiveness at 20 years, you can only use save for a maximum of 5 years. All right, so this person has the ability to use save for 5 years. Then if they want to, and it makes sense for them to receive forgiveness at 20 years, they can switch down the road. Right, but I don't want to focus too much on that tonight. I really want to kind of keep everything focused on what do I need to do between now and the end of the month, and then maybe get us into early 2025 before we start worrying about switching to a new version of IBR. Right now, we want to make sure, do I have the loan types that are required to receive the count adjustment? Can I receive the maximum count adjustment possible? Based on my IDR profile, which plan should I be in? Right, and for this person, right, this is great for now, and it may make the most sense, particularly if their payment will remain this low until next August, to stick with pay. But after that, we want to get them into save so they can benefit from that unpaid interest subsidy, and then we can reevaluate whether or not they need to switch sometime in the future. All right, so that's how we use your student aid data file and the My Student Loans tool to assess kind of the immediacy of what do I need to do before the end of the month. Right, what are my loans telling me? And then we use the simulator to kind of assess, which repayment option should I be in the short term and long term. All right, well, this kicked me out of where I was in the presentation. Okay, so IDR profiles 1, 2, 3, 4. Any questions on that I'm missing, or anybody wants to clarify regarding the profiles?
Tony, I think our number one question right now is for those that have health profession student loans and are trying to consolidate them. And unfortunately, there's that glitch in the system. So could you just talk about that for now?
Yeah.
I tell everybody we can cover that live because it's a big one.
Yeah, so good. Thank you. So yes, unfortunately, and oh my God, can this be the worst timing? So they've been making a lot of changes to the system, Department of Education lately. For something happened recently that will break your electronic consolidation application if you add a held profession student loan to it. It might do that too with loans for disadvantaged student. I'm not really sure. I know for sure that the held profession student loans are currently breaking the electronic application. Myself and a whole bunch of other people have been harassing the Department of Education, trying to get them, one, to acknowledge that it's even an issue, and then two, to get some kind of feedback on when it might be fixed. And I'm not encouraged so far that it's going to be fixed by the end of the month. So if you have held profession student loans and you have reason to consolidate your loans before the end of this month, then you may have to use the paper application, right? So, and the paper application lives on studentaid.gov under the consolidate loans. And towards the bottom, can I submit a paper application? Yes. This is what kills me, right? Why we highly recommend using the online application. Well, you would if you could, right? But you can't right now if you have held profession student loans, right? So you can submit. This is kind of the old school way, right? This is how I submitted my consolidation loan back in the day, right? Submit your consolidation application via paper, put the loans that you want included in there, including your held profession student loans, send it to the address that's on the application and send it certified mail. So you know when they receive it, and it gets kind of that date stamp that indicates that you sent it before the June 30th deadline, right? And then hopefully that will get processed in a reasonable amount of time and include all of those loans, right? And be counted under the forgiveness count adjustment. The other way that you can consider doing this is to consolidate all of your loans other than the held profession student loans. So exclude the held profession student loans, and you can request to add those later, but you still have to do that via paper, right? So direct consolidation loan, request to add loans. You have 180 days from the time a consolidation loan is completed to add additional loans that may have gotten left out of that consolidation application, right? In either scenario here, you have to do some kind of paper component. So if you're going to do a paper component, just do it all in one paper application, right? So that's what I would do if I had the held profession student loans right now. Any other questions on the income-driven repayment profiles or what we've covered so far in the My Student Loans tool? Anything else you want me to show in the My Student Loans tool?
Yeah, a lot of questions coming in.
Okay.
We've got about 60 sitting in the Q&A right now.
All right, let me take a peek. I'll take a peek too here. Go ahead and read one while I'm looking for the Q&A window here. Oh, there it is.
Yeah. So I think another one that's come up quite a few times, and I've dropped it in the chat here a couple of times, but I think good to answer live is, where do we go to consolidate? How do we consolidate?
Yeah, so that's the student aid website that I was on just a second ago. So studentaid.gov, the same place that the consolidation loan paper application lives, is where you would go to do the electronic application. The electronic application being for those that is going to be successful for those now that don't have the held profession student loans, right? And if you do have held profession student loans, try the electronic application. You know, at some point they may fix that, but right now what's happening when you add the held profession student loans and you go to the next step in the application to select your repayment plan, that's when it breaks. It gives you a 404 page not found error, right? And it appears to be that the adding of the held profession student loans is what is breaking that application. So if you log in here on the consolidation loan application page, under the loan repayment header, right, it'll pull in all of the loans it finds in your file. Those held profession student loans, loans for disadvantaged students, are not in your file, so you have to add them separately. And then currently that's what's breaking the application if you have those outside loan types to add. I do see a question in here from I'm kind of looking at there's just the top of the Q&A list from Carrie. I graduated in 2002. I consolidated my loans in February. Okay, so FFEL loans in February. I paid all through COVID. I'm assuming I will be able to reach forgiveness this year if the 3 years of COVID count. So yeah, the 3 years of COVID count, and you didn't need to make payments, right? So unfortunately, you're past the window where you could get a refund for those, but you didn't need to make payments during the COVID forbearance period to get forgiveness credit. So you know, pay the what the income-driven plans. The income-driven plans do not incentivize you to pay extra towards your student loans when nothing is due, right? If you have very low payments or you don't have zero payments, this comes up all the time too. If I have a $0 minimum monthly payment, do I need to make payments to still get forgiveness credit? The answer is no, right? And you shouldn't be paying more than your income requires you to pay, particularly under this forgiveness count adjustment period, right? We really want to see how much forgiveness time do I have so I know how much time I have left remaining. And if it's likely you're going to hit forgiveness, making extra payments is not going to help you at all. You're just going to waste that money, right? So don't pay any more than you have to towards your student loans. Get the maximum amount of forgiveness credit you possibly can. I have been paying, or Natalie asks, I have been paying or deferred for 24 years, 2 consolidated loans currently on the recommended repayment plan. Can I accelerate the forgiveness? So yeah, there's a lot in there, Natalie, that I'd love to have some more information on. Depending on the types of deferment you had, that's why we really need to see your loan details and then also ultimately see what the forgiveness count is that's applied to your loans. As long as you have all direct consolidation loans remaining, that's great. When you say you're in the recommended repayment plan, I'm not really sure what that means, right? So hopefully that's either ICR or SAVE for you. If that's the case, you can't really accelerate forgiveness, right? It's going to depend on what count you're actually provided. If you get a count of 24 years, great, then you'll have 1 year of payments that need to be made until you eclipse the 25-year threshold for somebody who graduated in 2002 to trigger forgiveness. Now, it could be that in your history, you have even more than 24 years of repayment time. And if that's the case, then once they get to your loans and they see that and you've eclipsed that 25-year threshold, that's when you'll get the forgiveness letter, right? So just, make sure you have all consolidation loans remaining. And when you say you're in the recommended repayment plan, please tell us what that is, right? I don't, recommended to you may be different than what we know to be forgiveness eligible, right? So let's clarify those types of things. So we're for sure you're on track to reach forgiveness. Holly, oh, I know. Yeah, go ahead.
A couple of questions about those that are currently in the borrower's defense. Would you be able to cover that one live for us?
Yeah, so borrower defense is for Ross graduates, attendees only. And it really depends on which group you were in. And you have the option, again, depending on which group you're in, to keep your loans in forbearance while your borrower defense application is processed, or you can choose to keep your loans in an income-driven plan, right? Or some kind of repayment plan. I would recommend an income-driven plan, right? But it's not an easy decision to make. It really depends on how likely you think your borrower defense request is to be processed, right? If it goes through, right, and all of your loans associated with that program are canceled, then forbearance is a great idea, right? If it doesn't go through, then that forbearance time is not going to count as forgiveness eligible. And if, depending on what group you're in, you're still accruing interest too, right? So in that case, you may want to consider a plan like SAVE that provides that unpaid interest subsidy, depending on what your minimum monthly payment would be. So it's up to you whether or not you want to, quote, hedge your bets, right? Do you want to continue earning forgiveness time, maybe decrease the amount of interest that accrues by using a plan like SAVE? If you end up getting that borrower defense, then those payments that you made will have been wasted, right? But if you don't end up getting the borrower defense, at least you're still accruing repayment time, forgiveness credit, and you're not seeing that unpaid interest balance accrue, right? So it's another pickle, right? It's just a different kind of one. So that's a really tough one. So it really depends on which group you're in and the likelihood that you are to receive that forgiveness under that borrower defense settlement. This question from Holly. Holly, I know you've posted to the boards. I think you even posted to one of our blog posts, and I've been, you're definitely in the queue for me to reply to this. And this is a very common question that comes up too. So how do we know forgiveness will still be a thing in the next 15 years? I'm a 2015 graduate on a 25-year plan. Yeah, forgiveness is still going to be a thing. It's baked into your master promissory notes, the contracts that everybody signed when they took their federal student loans. Forgiveness is still going to be a thing until all of those loans are gone, right? And there's 45 million federal student loan borrowers, right? So forgiveness is not going away anytime soon, right? Now, one surefire way to make sure that you won't be eligible for forgiveness is to not work towards it, right? Is to not do the things that we know you need to do to receive the forgiveness credit, right? But forgiveness will be a thing, right? Now, whether or not it's taxable when you reach forgiveness is still debatable. Right now, there is a forgiveness exemption from student loan forgiveness being counted as taxable income. Generally speaking, when you have any type of loan canceled or forgiven, it can be treated as taxable income. Through 2025, student loan forgiveness is not one of those things that can be treated as taxable income at the federal level. In 2025 is going to be a huge year for Congress. Lots of big decisions that have to be made. One of those big decisions are going to be what happens with the tax exemption that's currently in place and set to expire at the end of 2025. Congress will either choose to extend that or they'll let it expire, right? We don't know yet, right? But that doesn't cancel forgiveness. It just helps to determine whether or not forgiveness will be taxable or non-taxable at a federal level. Right, but forgiveness will be a thing. They cannot eliminate forgiveness. Forgiveness is part of the law that governs your federal student loan repayment option and applies to income-driven repayment plans. If you continue to make payments under the income-driven repayment plans, you will continue to earn forgiveness credit. And if you still have a balance remaining when you eclipse one of those forgiveness thresholds for whatever plan you're using, then you will hit forgiveness. Right. So, yes, I know it's scary to think that it can be canceled, but it cannot be eliminated that easily. Right. We may see it be eliminated in the future, but that is more likely to be the case for people who haven't started borrowing yet. And maybe they'll have a different student loan type that doesn't include an income-driven repayment plan or some kind of forgiveness benefit. But that's not the current world that we live in. Right? The current world that we live in has federal student loans that have contracts associated with them that have income-driven plans as an eligible repayment option, and those income-driven plans have forgiveness at the end of them if you still have a balance. Right. So I would not use an income-driven plan because you think that forgiveness might be eliminated in the future. That would be a really financially detrimental path to take, right? And I think, Holly, in one of the other questions you phrased it, wouldn't it be best to pay back your student loans faster? It depends on how you define best, right? In most cases, for the types of balances that we're talking about, right? I mean, just look at some of the examples that I showed here, right? This person's got 175,000. This person's got 190,000, right? This person's got 340,000. To pay this balance to zero is going to require a punitive amount of your income, right? To the point where you're, one, you may not even be able to make that type of payment, or two, you're cutting so deep into your financial wellness that a significant chunk of, your emergency savings, your retirement savings, savings for your family are going to suffer so much that it doesn't make sense to do that. Yes, ideally, we would love to all be able to hit a zero balance in our student loans and not have it affect our overall financial wellness. But again, that's not really reality for a lot of us, right? So you have to be very, very careful, right? I would certainly never recommend that somebody race to a zero balance on their student loans at the expense of their overall financial wealth and wellness to avoid forgiveness. right? We're seeing people receive forgiveness now, and it's more likely that people in the future are going to receive forgiveness at an even higher rate because there's going to be more people that eclipse those forgiveness thresholds, right? You don't want to be left on the outside looking in because you're fearful of something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense based on how the rules are currently written. So hopefully that, addresses that. I mean, that's one of those big questions that constantly comes up, right? You can hate these programs and you can hate the concept. That's cool, but it doesn't make it go away, right? So you can either benefit from them or you can choose not to, right? It's really up to you.
Just a reminder, please put your questions in the Q&A. I know there's some coming in through the chat. They're likely to get missed there just because we are focusing on the Q&A window. So you can find that at the bottom of your screen if you're not sure where that Q&A window is, and just ask your questions there.
Great. And I see an anonymous one here. What is the consolidation? Yeah, so the consolidation is a federal direct consolidation. Does it have to be consolidated with a certain group? Yes, it has to be consolidated with the Department of Education, right? The Department of Education consolidates the direct loan, right? The direct loan umbrella means that the loan comes directly from the Department of Education, right? That's why it's called a direct loan. Now you'll have servicers, loan servicers there, right? And I think in yours, you mentioned that Navient was your loan servicer. That tells me that you have the wrong loan type, right? Navient only services the older federal student loans that fell into the privately held category that are not eligible for the forgiveness count adjustment. If your loans are with Navient, you need to apply for a direct consolidation loan, right? You are in that IDR profile 4 group that I covered in the beginning, right? So direct consolidation loan is what you're looking for, right? And I think, let me see if I can find that initial example that I have, right? Direct loans, right? Loan servicer, Department of Ed / something. That's the type of loan you want, right? Nelnet just means this is the servicer. This is your point, the company who is the point of contact where you receive your statements, right? And if you call and have a question, that's who you'll call, right? But your loan is still a federal direct loan, right? So that's that, and I think that's a lot of the confusion, right? People just generally don't really understand the nomenclature and where the loan lives, and that's important for what benefits do they receive. A question here, to plan for public service loan forgiveness, can my hours per week be split from 2 different 501c3 nonprofit organizations so it adds up to full time? Absolutely, right? As long as your split hours add up to average at least 30 hours per week, then you will still meet the public service loan forgiveness qualifications. And if you're working towards public service loan forgiveness, different type of forgiveness than income-driven repayment plan forgiveness. So if you're working towards public service loan forgiveness, your student aid data file will have your progress logged if you've submitted the public service loan forgiveness employment certification form, right? So if you want to check on your public service loan forgiveness progress, go grab your federal student aid data file, upload it in here, and look for a number here or in the PSLF status tab, right? Which will show your accumulated public service loan forgiveness progress. Public service loan forgiveness progress you can track and see in your file. Income-driven repayment progress you cannot yet see. That's what the forgiveness count adjustment is all about, is applying some kind of count to your income-driven repayment forgiveness progress as well. I see a question here. This is a good one. This one comes up not infrequently. I have undergraduate and vet school loans. If my parents are planning to pay off my undergraduate loans, is there a way to separate the loans for payment once the repayment period starts? Right. And I think I maybe saw this one on the message boards recently too, especially if you're a new graduate. This is another tough one. There's no real great answer for this. However, it depends on your overall student loan balance, what your income-driven repayment plan profiles are, right? So if you're in that IDR profile 1 because you're a new grad and a lot of new grads are, and your balance is such that it's likely for you to reach forgiveness, then it doesn't make sense for your parents to pay off that undergraduate loan. It'd be a waste of their money. Right? Now, if you guys still want to do that, go for it, right? But financially, it's going to be a poor use of those funds. It would be better if they gifted you that amount and you consolidated your loans, paid the minimum, potentially hit forgiveness down the road, right? You'll pay less towards your loans and you'll have more function from those family funds than if your family tries to pay that portion of the undergraduate loans, right? Again, very common family dynamic that always comes up. But if you start to parse this out and look at the benefits you have with your federal student loans, like coming back to that statement I made earlier, your federal student loans are the most flexible but annoying debt you'll ever have. It doesn't make sense to pay back any portion of it if you're going to hit forgiveness. Right? It would be better if you kept those funds separate, put all of those loans into a direct consolidation loan, pay them back using an income-driven plan. You'll end up with more in the end if you do that than if you pay a chunk with your parents' money and still pay the rest of your graduate school loans with your veterinary income and potentially hit forgiveness, right? It just doesn't make financial sense to do that. All right, looking at AidVantage, all I see is that my loans are consolidated, but no idea if they're in pay-as-you-earn or phase-out plan. How can I tell? Okay, so this is a great illustration here. So I'm going to show you guys. Rebecca, do you see the Q&A window on my screen now? If I move it over?
No, I don't
okay.
think
All right.
Zoom will let you show Zoom.
Okay. All right, cool. So if you're looking at AidVantage, go to studentaid.gov, download your student aid data file and upload it into the My Student Loans tool, right? I can't really explain why AidVantage isn't showing you a repayment plan or how you can find it more easily. And I don't go to the loan servicers for that type of information. That's why we use the student aid data file, right? The student aid data file is consistent for everyone, right? We know where to find the repayment plan information you're using, your minimum monthly payment, your anniversary date, and then we can also tell you your IDR profile to see if you should benefit from pay-as-you-earn before the phase-out date. I can't really coach you through the process just by looking at your loan servicer account, right? You have to go into the studentaid.gov, download your file, and upload it into the My Student Loans tool. All right, another question about pay-as-you-earn. What if you are currently in repayment with pay-as-you-earn? Do you have to recertify by July 1st to make sure we stay in it? No, great question. You do not, right? If you're in pay-as-you-earn, right? Let me find my example that's in pay-as-you-earn here. Here it is. So this person's in pay-as-you-earn. As long as you're in pay-as-you-earn before July 1st, or maybe you've applied for it before July 1st, you don't have to recertify, right? This person is in pay-as-you-earn. Their anniversary date is in 2025. They will remain in pay-as-you-earn and they will continue to be able to recertify for pay-as-you-earn as long as they're in it before that July 1st phase-out date. Right, so this is a perfect illustration of that. If you have your student aid data file and you upload it in the My Student Loans tool, you'll see your repayment plan so you can confirm. Right, this is a really important point. Becca and I see this all the time. People say, I'm using pay-as-you-earn, and this says something else, right? It says revised pay-as-you-earn, or it says IBR, or it says ICR, or it says extended or graduated, or some other plan you thought you were in, right? So make sure it says pay-as-you-earn, right? Check your anniversary date, and while you're in here, check and see which income-driven repayment profile you're in. I consolidated my loans when I graduated in 2006, are paying through Sloan. So Sloan, what can I do now? Okay, this is great, Carrie. So Carrie, you are one of those people that need to run to consolidate your loans, right? Sloan is the equivalent of Navient. Sloan is the private servicing arm of Nelnet. So if your loans are with Sloan, they are the wrong type to receive the forgiveness count adjustment. right? You are in that IDR profile 4, the people who need to run to consolidate their loans, right? Now, for some of you, I can say that definitively, right? Navient, run. Sloan, run, right? All of the other ones, though, sometimes a loan servicer can be doing it for those wrong loan types and sometimes the right loan types. But Navient and Sloan are two of those loan servicers that are only the wrong loan types, right? So run to the consolidation application and submit it before June 30th. All right, Natalie's got another question here. I have used the loan physical exam and I'm following all the recommendations. Is there a way to accelerate forgiveness? I'm not really sure I understand what you mean by accelerate forgiveness, right? So if your loans are already consolidated, they're in a forgiveness eligible plan, and you're just waiting to see what the count is, you just have to wait, right? There's no way to force them to give you the count faster, right? You will either receive a forgiveness letter because you've met the count threshold, or you'll receive a count by at least September 1st, and you'll be able to know where you are in the process, right? I know this is kind of maddening, right? But the best you can do right now is guess. And if it's less than 25 years, right, which it probably is, since you haven't received forgiveness yet, then you have to wait to see what the number is, right? And then from there, we can decide which repayment option you need to use to achieve that remaining time before you reach forgiveness. Where's the application to consolidate your loans, and is there a deadline for the SAVE program? So the application to consolidate your loans is on studentaid.gov under the loan repayment tab, consolidate my loans. There is no deadline for SAVE. Right? SAVE is one of the newer income-driven repayment options. If it's your best or will result in the lowest monthly payment for you, then you can apply for it during the application, during the consolidation loan process. All right, Sarah's asking, I have a direct consolidated subsidized loan and a direct consolidated unsubsidized loan. Should these be consolidated? No, they can't be. So fully consolidated, when we talk about fully consolidated loans, hold on, I think I have that example here somewhere too. Sorry, let me give you a second here. Let's see if this is this one. Nope, not that one. Maybe it's this one. Yes, okay. So when you consolidate your loans, if you have a portion of them that are subsidized loans and a portion that is unsubsidized loans, they will separate them into different components of the same consolidation loan, right? And they do that because subsidized loans have different benefits than unsubsidized loans, and they want to be able to track those differently, right? But in this, what you're looking for is, do they have the same dates? Now, if you have a really complicated history, and back in the day, they used to let you consolidate your loans every year, and even while you're in school, it was a total mess, right? You can have a loan portfolio that has multiple different types of consolidation loans with different dates. If your consolidation loans have different dates, then you can and probably should reconsolidate them before the June 30th deadline. But if you only have two remaining consolidation loans, unsubsidized and subsidized, and they both have the same date, then that's as far as you can go. They can't be consolidated any further than that. And you're already in line to receive the maximum forgiveness count adjustment. Right after that, I'm looking more at, which repayment options are you eligible to use? What would the monthly payment be? Right, that sort of thing. Right, but it doesn't sound like you have anything left to do, Sarah, with your loans before the count adjustment, or to receive the maximum count adjustment. All right, anytime you consolidate, does your outstanding interest get capitalized? Is there a way around this? No, there's no way around that. So if you consolidate your loans, your unpaid interest will capitalize. But don't let that be the reason that you don't consolidate, right? If you have a lot of unpaid interest and you're worried about it, the question you should be asking is, do I have something to benefit by consolidating my loans, right? And what does that mean? That means I can add like a health profession student loan or a Perkins loan or a loans for disadvantaged student or some other FEL program loan into my balance that's eligible for the newer income-driven plans and would maximize my forgiveness count adjustment. Right? If I've got a constellation of loans remaining with different repayment time and I can consolidate them to increase the amount of forgiveness time across my entire remaining balance, then I want to consolidate, no matter what that unpaid interest balance shows. We've done this analysis for people who have 6 figures of unpaid interest balance. And if they can add forgiveness time or make more of their loans eligible for save, then it still makes sense to consolidate, even with the unpaid interest capitalization. Right now, the one time that changes, and let me see if I have an example of that. I might. If you have a good chunk of your loans that are direct loans and a small chunk are FEL program loans, you might be able to get away with just consolidating that FEL portion and leaving the direct loans out. Right. And in most cases, what I've seen is that the higher unpaid interest balance is associated with the bigger chunk, which is usually the direct loan balance in those cases. So if you want to get your FEL program loans to be on the same forgiveness clock and also be included with maybe your SAVE repayment plan or your pay-as-you-earn repayment plan, then you can consolidate just those FEL portions. Right now, where that blows up is if you also have those FEL program loans happen to be the older loans, right? So if that older loan might help to add more forgiveness time across your entire balance, then it would make sense to consolidate all of the loans together. I think I might have an example that I've used before for that. Let me just see if I can pick it out really quick.
Sorry, I mean, Tony's been doing this for many years more than I have, you know. I'm definitely still in the learning phase, and I'm lucky enough to learn from all of his expertise. But I'll say I question myself all the time of like, well, you know, would it not benefit this person to consolidate, or, you know, what's the downfall here? And I've yet to come across a situation where I'm like, oh no, I don't want you to do this. Like Tony was saying, that forgiveness time is extremely valuable. And this one-time forgiveness count is a huge benefit.
And this one is this kind of illustrates what I was talking about, right? So and this happens if you were borrowing during the period that encompasses 2010. Right. So this person graduated vet school in 2015. They did some undergrad time that they used student loans for that straddled that 2010 period. 2010 is when they phased out the FEL program, right? And everything was then direct loans after that, right? But there was this transition phase where we had FELs before 2010 and then only direct loans after that, right? So if you're in that window where you attended higher education and your loans could have been those FEL program loans, this is when we see those split portfolios where you still have some FEL program loans, but you might have a bulk of direct loans. That's what we see in this particular instance, right? 94% of their loans are direct loans. The other 6% are FEL program loans. And in this case, when I look at their borrowing history, it's consistent, right? There's no breaks. 2007, 2009, 2010, all the way to 2015, right? They started undergrad in 2007 and stopped borrowing when they graduated from vet school in 2015. There was no additional repayment time to be had there, right? So in this case, right, the bulk of their unpaid interest is with their direct loans, right? But they've got this small portion of FEL program loans that aren't eligible for SAVE, right? Because these loans are less flexible, right? But they don't need to consolidate all of their loans. They just need to consolidate the FEL portion. And if they do that, this balance will then be eligible for SAVE, and it'll still maintain the repayment credit, the forgiveness credit, under the count adjustment. After June 30th, that will not be the case, right? So this is a perfect illustration of if you have kind of one of these split portfolios where it would make the most sense for this person to consolidate just their FELs, right? Leave the direct loans out of it. And in that case, you'll only see $2,200 of unpaid interest capitalized as opposed to the full, you know, 24,000 or 23,000 and change, right? So this, again, that's a little bit more complex. But that's how you can approach that if that's what you're seeing in your student aid file. All right, I'm gonna keep going down the list here. Kristen, anytime you consolidate, does your outstanding interest get capitalized or is way around? Oh, so that was the question I just answered. Sorry, I didn't hit the answer live. So would it be foolish to rely on the public service loan forgiveness, tax-free forgiveness after the 10 years if I am on top of tracking everything? No, absolutely not, right? Again, if you're tracking everything, that's what you should be doing, right? So, and you should be relying on your public service loan forgiveness to go through. That's happening too. We're seeing colleagues receive public service loan forgiveness, right? So I don't know how else to say this, but again, the surefire way to make sure that you don't get forgiveness is to ignore it or not do the things that you need to do to make sure you're on track. If you're doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing to be on track for forgiveness, when you hit the 10-year threshold, apply for the forgiveness and you should be granted it, right? I mean, we're seeing that happen. That's how it's written. That's how it's been granted. It's had some bumps, but it's working. All right, I have consolidated on save currently. Why do I see the interest continue to accumulate? When is the government subsidy going to kick in? So a couple of different things there. So it's a good question. Is save doesn't eliminate your unpaid interest, right? It eliminates future unpaid interest, right? So let me see if if you were using repay previously, or you were using pay as you earn previously, or IBR, and you had an unpaid interest balance, if you switch to save, that unpaid interest balance will stop accruing, but it won't eliminate the previous unpaid interest balance, right? So that previous unpaid interest balance is still there. It's still stuck. It's still in your account. It's your part of your balance. But if you're in save now, then future current unpaid interest should not be accruing, right? So that's what I would want to double check, right? Are we talking about prior unpaid interest or are we talking about current unpaid interest? And save started in October. So if you were in repay, you automatically got converted to save in October. And from October 2023 on, you should not be accruing any additional unpaid interest. Now, there have been some forbearance time that the loan servicers have been using because the loan servicers have been terrible at keeping up with this. If your loans get put into a forbearance, right, that's not the same as pay or save. Sorry, it's not the same as save. You don't get the unpaid interest subsidy, right? So now if it's a forbearance that they put your loans in because they screwed something up, they should go back and credit you that amount because you should have been in save anyway, right? So if you're still continuing to accrue unpaid interest while using save, then call your loan servicer and ask them why, right? And ask them the reason why you're not receiving the save unpaid interest subsidy, right? And that could be something that you can get corrected. But if all of this is from prior history, it's not going away. It just will stop accruing going forward. What does the red number mean? All right, so good question. So the interest is always red, but the red, if the monthly payment is red, it means that it's less than the monthly interest that accrues. If it's green, it means that your minimum monthly payment is greater than the monthly interest that accrues, right? So if you're using save, or if you see repay, so repay again is save in your file, this means that you should be receiving the unpaid interest subsidy because your monthly payment is less than the monthly interest that accrues. Once your monthly payment is greater than the monthly interest, you will no longer receive the subsidy. Your payment is covering the interest, right? You only receive the save unpaid interest subsidy if your minimum monthly payment is less than the monthly interest that accrues. Beth, I think I may have missed the context of your question. What about an alternative payment plan? Same scenario.
What happens if you see alternative repayment plan listed under your repayment plan here on the
Oh,
student
okay.
loans?
Yeah. Alternative repayment plan is usually reserved for when you're using revised pay as you earn and you didn't provide the required annual income documentation on time, or you're using some other alternative repayment option that's not part of the normal suite of options that are usually available. So something that either your loan servicer is requiring you to use because of some historical circumstance to your loans, or something that you may have requested specifically from them. So that's that one I would need a little bit more information on, and probably to see your the details in your student aid file to know exactly what that alternative means for you.
Tony, would you also be able to discuss the discrepancy between the language in the consolidation application about when you would reach forgiveness versus once the account adjustment is applied?
Yeah, good one. So I think I have a slide on this one. Oop, what's in here? Yeah, so when you go through this yellow box here, so when you go through the consolidation application, um, because nobody's received a forgiveness count adjustment yet, and because in the past consolidating your loans would restart your clock, your forgiveness eligibility, you're going to see a lot of scary language in there. It's going to look like they're not giving you any forgiveness credit. They're going to say, you're going to reach forgiveness 25 years from now, and the total costs are going to be way off. It's because the consolidation application does not yet factor in forgiveness time, right? And in the future, it should or will, once everybody has a count to work off of, because that data hasn't yet been implemented, it's assuming everybody's starting repayment from zero forgiveness time, right? And you can't pay any attention to that, right? That's not that the forgiveness count adjustment is what supersedes that right now. So in order to get through the application, right, you're going to see a bunch of that scary language and a longer duration of repayment, but that's not taking into account the forgiveness count adjustment. So you have to just kind of, submit that, knowing that the forgiveness count adjustment is going to give you the forgiveness time that will shorten your time to forgiveness. Do you need to apply for repay or save before July 1st? You do not, right? So repay, save are the same plan. They're sticking around. There's no deadline for applying for that particular plan. You can and should apply for that if it's the best repayment option for you, and you can get a low payment when you're applying for that. All right, let's see. I graduated in May 2024, plan to use SAVE to pay back loans. How do I put in the amount of money I will make if I will also moonlight at another clinic? I am completing an internship this year. Right, so this Sarah, that's a great question. And when you document your income for an income-driven plan, they will ask you, have you filed a tax return recently? And by recently, they mean in either of the last two tax filing years, right? So for us right now, that's 2023 and 2022 tax filing years. If you filed a tax return before you graduated for 2023 tax filing year, you can use that as your income documentation. They will always accept a recently filed tax return as valid income documentation for your repayment plan. If you're earning additional income on the side this year, it will be on the tax return you submit for 2024 when you file that tax return in early 2025, right? And so that will impact your monthly save payment for the following 12 months, right? You do not need to include that income now. Now, if you don't have a tax return on file from last year or this most recently filed tax return year, then you will have to provide other documentation of your income, meaning, your internship income and or the income that you're making on the side if it's within the last 90 days. right? So it's really valuable to have a previously filed tax return on file, particularly as a new graduate, because most new graduates, if they file a tax return before they graduate, their tax return shows something very low or zero, or maybe even negative. And you can use that to get a $0 monthly payment on your first 12 months of payments. All right, so switching from new grad to a 2011 grad, Jessica, all my loans are eligible for this new consolidation. I checked already with the studentaid.gov. When it gives me the options to select which repayment plan to choose, it gives me the payoff date of 2049, right? So that encompasses what we were just talking about, right? When you consolidate, or even if you apply for a new income-driven plan, it doesn't know what your forgiveness time is yet, right? So it's going to assume you're starting the 25-year clock right now, 2024, which brings you to 2049, right? If you graduated in 2011, then and you consolidated your loans already, you're going to receive, at least 12, 13 years of forgiveness credit once the count is applied. The count hasn't been applied yet, except for people who have already eclipsed the threshold to receive forgiveness, right? They're working their way through all of those people first. And once they've gotten through all of those, they're going to go back and assign the counts for everybody who hasn't yet reached forgiveness. You'll get a number, and then that will determine how far away you are for forgiveness. So don't pay attention. These payoff dates, don't pay attention to any of that, right? When I'm in the student aid portal, the only thing that I pay attention to for a consolidation loan or for my income-driven plan is what the payment's going to be for the next 12 months. That's it. That's the only number I care about, right? And I want to make sure that that number is calculated correctly based on my income, tax filing status, family size, right? So don't pay attention to those payoff dates or the total costs, right? The Department of Education estimates are not even close to accurate right now. Yeah, so in your question, no, that's not correct, right? Your payoff date, it is not accurate in there. And when you say consolidate again, again, because you graduated in 2011, it depends on what your loans look like right now. If they're all direct consolidation loans, then you shouldn't have to consolidate again, right? But if you have a consolidation loan and some other loans in there, then you may want to consider consolidating again. And don't pay attention to the payoff date. Serena, let's see. I have direct loans. Sorry, the question thing moved on me. So I have different types of direct loans. Should I consolidate? Graduated 2016 on pay as you earn currently. I can't really answer that without knowing what IDR profile you're in and whether or not all of those loans are from vet school, right? So that's too tough to tell, right? So the fact that they're not consolidated makes me lean towards I'm looking for a reason to consolidate, right? If you've got some older loans in there that might have more repayment time, then you definitely want to consolidate them before the end of the month. If all of them are from vet school, then don't worry about it. But the fact that you have subsidized loans suggests to me that you have some loans that are not from veterinary school. So I'd want to know more about the history there. So I can't answer that one just from the information that you provided. So would my loan payment be lower if I choose to consolidate? That's a great question. It depends. It depends on what your balance remaining is. It depends on which income-driven plans you're eligible for. It depends on what your income is, right? As the name implies, the income-driven plans factor in your income, right? It may not be in some cases. However, if you've got 20 plus years of repayment time that can be converted to forgiveness time by consolidating, and instead of paying on your loans for another 10 years at a slightly lower rate, you can pay on your loans for another 2 or 3 years at a higher rate to hit forgiveness. It may still be better for you to do that, right? It's to get the forgiveness time, right? The forgiveness time, after you know how much forgiveness time you have and what it's going to cost you to reach forgiveness, you can either choose to do that or you can go back to paying what you were paying before. right? So it doesn't, but if you don't have the forgiveness time, then forgiveness is not an option, right? You want to make sure that you get the forgiveness time if you can get it, and you need to do something before the end of this month to do so, do it, right? It's just that forgiveness time opens up a whole new set of options to a potentially shorter period to get to the end of loan repayment that may cost you less, right? So look into that. Don't worry about whether or not just if the payment is lower or not, right? You want to know how much time have I accrued that can be converted to forgiveness eligible time, and then we can figure out the rest after that. Let's see. Am I still in IDR profile 3 if all of my loans are direct loans, but some are direct Stafford and some are direct consolidated? Yeah, IDR profile 3 has more to do with when you started borrowing, right? If you have direct consolidated loans and direct Stafford loans, your loans are not fully consolidated, right? So I want to look at that history to see if all of my remaining loans are likely to have the same amount of repayment time. If they do, then you can leave them as is. If not, you'll want to consolidate them before the end of the month. We covered the borrower defense one. Ooh, this is a good one. So 2024 grad. So if you are in IDR profile 2, so the pickle, and you're a 2024 grad and you want to use save, should you consolidate your loans? Yes. Presuming you graduated just recently, right? Your loans are in their grace period, accruing interest, and not eligible for forgiveness time. Consolidation will help you end the grace period, get your loans into save, and start receiving forgiveness time and the unpaid interest subsidy. Yeah, right. Well, I think we covered the health profession. So there's a question. The next one in my list here is the health profession student loan causing trouble with the electronic application. And yeah, that's a known issue, unfortunately. And you may have to submit that paper application to get those health profession student loans included in your direct consolidation loan application. When you consolidate the HPSL, does it apply towards the pay and save? Yes, right. That's one of the reasons why you want to do that, right? If you consolidate your health profession student loan, that balance will now be included in a direct consolidation loan. The direct loans are what are eligible for the income-driven plans like pay and save, right? So the health profession student loan by itself cannot be repaid using an income-driven plan. But it is a type of federal student loan, which makes it eligible for consolidation. And once that balance is included in a direct consolidation loan, then it will be covered by your income-driven monthly payment. If you leave the health profession student loan out, it's like a separate loan that can only be paid under a standard 10-year plan. So you'll have your payments on your direct loans and you'll have your payments that go to your health profession student loans, which means you're paying more per month than you would otherwise have to if you consolidated those loans together. All right, here's a good one. I'm confused about how the time paying so far dictates whether forgiveness is possible. Are only those who have been paying for greater than 25 years eligible? I'm a 2003 grad with greater than 20 years of repayment so far. So the amount of time that you've been in repayment translates to how much forgiveness time you can earn under the forgiveness count adjustment. Right? But the fact that you're a 2003 grad means that you quite likely have some of those less favorable loans that aren't automatically included in the forgiveness count adjustment. Right? So if you're a 2023 grad, that tells me that you stand to receive at least 21 years of forgiveness eligible time as long as you have the right loan types. Right? So if you have those direct consolidation loans remaining, as a 2003 grad, when your forgiveness count adjustment is applied, you'll have 21 years of forgiveness credit, which means you're 4 years away from reaching forgiveness. that compares to whatever other repayment plan you're using now, which could have you being in repayment longer, paying more, right? So how much repayment time you have so far puts you on the forgiveness time frame. And if you're in repayment for more than 25 years, those are the people who have already received forgiveness. But if you receive something less than 25 years, then you're close to receiving forgiveness and have a few years left remaining to make payments before you reach forgiveness. If I'm in IDR profile 4 and all loans are direct consolidated, okay, so that can't be, right? So you can only be in IDO profile 4 if your loans are not direct loans, right? So that's we got Beth, we got to double check that, right? So if you have all direct consolidated loans, then you're good, right? You're set to receive the forgiveness count adjustment, right? But IDO profile 4 only applies to folks who do not have direct loans. Now, if in terms of whether or not you should be in SAVE or ICR, that's going to depend on what your income is and your family size, right? So whichever one of those produces a lower payment for you, choose that. If you choose the SAVE program, can you pay higher than the monthly payment to be able to pay your loans off faster? Or are you required to pay your loans off in 25 years? Yeah, this comes up a lot. If you're using SAVE, and this is the importance of knowing whether or not you're receiving the unpaid interest subsidy, right? So if your minimum monthly payment is less than the monthly interest accrual, then you're receiving the unpaid interest subsidy. You do not want to pay more, right? You're going to eliminate that subsidy. Let the Department of Education cover the unpaid interest, right? You can do better things with that money. SAVE has a maximum repayment period of 25 years, right? If you still have a balance remaining when you hit 25 years, it gets forgiven. Right? If your income, you just because you use an income-driven plan doesn't mean you automatically hit forgiveness, right? Your income-driven plans have you make minimum payments based on your income, and that payment will either pay your balance to zero before you hit 25 years, or you'll still have a balance remaining when you reach 25 years. If you have a balance remaining, that's what triggers forgiveness. If you pay the balance to zero before you reach forgiveness, there's nothing left to forgive, right? So let your income determine your minimum monthly payment. You'll either pay the balance to zero or you won't, and you'll hit forgiveness, right? Either is fine. You'll be done with student loan repayment, right? That's the secret to federal student loan repayment, right? Your loans will be gone one way or another, right? But it doesn't make sense to pay more than your minimum if you're going to hit forgiveness or if you're receiving the unpaid interest subsidy, right? Wait until at least your minimum monthly payment is higher than the monthly interest accrual before you even consider paying extra. And even then, it may not make sense depending on how much longer you have and the likelihood that you'll reach forgiveness, right? People always want to pay more towards your student loans, but it doesn't always help you, right? Focus on other areas of your financial wellness that will benefit more so than paying extra towards your student loans. Jeff asks, how do we know how to evaluate which is better for IDR profile 2, pay as you earn versus save? And that's where we use the simulator in that example, right? Send your information over to the loan repayment simulator, fill in the fields, fill in your time in repayment, put your taxable income into the simulator, do some adjusting of the future income inputs if it makes sense for you to do that. Enter your family information, right? Whether or not you're married, how you file your taxes, if your spouse has student loans, if you're filing separately, if you live in a community property state, that will factor in how many dependents you have, how many that you plan to have in the future. All of those will play a role in determining your minimum monthly payment. When I enter all of that information in, right, and I run my simulations, right, that's when I'm going to start comparing. What does the monthly payment differences look like? What do the total cost differences look like? How much am I projected to have forgiven? Does my forgiveness savings plan seem reasonable for my budget? Right. Ultimately, I'll choose the one that is the best fit for my overall finances. Sometimes that's going to be the one that has the lowest minimum monthly payment. Sometimes that's going to be the one that maybe fits better in your budget. Right. So it really depends on what those numbers show and how you match that up against your overall financial wellness. Another great question that always comes up: does switching repayment plans restart your time to forgiveness? It does not. There is nothing that restarts your time to forgiveness anymore. All of that is gone, right? Nothing restarts your forgiveness time anymore. That used to happen when you consolidated your loans. That no longer happens, right? Switching repayment plans has never restarted your forgiveness clock. Consolidation used to, but no longer does, right? There is nothing that restarts your forgiveness clock. Not making eligible forgiveness payments after the count adjustment is applied will make sure that you're not accruing any forgiveness time, right? But nothing restarts your forgiveness clock, right? Even if you stop using an income-driven plan, the time that you have already logged to forgiveness will still be there in the background, right? So nothing restarts your forgiveness clock. Is there a best payment plan if still trying for public service loan forgiveness? That's a good question. So if you're using public service loan forgiveness, Save, the new version of Repay, is your best repayment plan because it provides the lowest minimum monthly payment possible of the income-driven plans, right? So use Save if your ultimate goal is public service loan forgiveness. Oh, this is a good one. So this is back to the borrower defense. My federal family education loan is in forbearance period pending a decision from the borrower defense. Can I still consolidate to a direct consolidation loan? Yes, you can. So for those of you on the borrower defense, and this came up on the student debt message boards, but if you're still here, and I'll make this part of the recording here, there is an excellent website that tracks the borrower defense progress, and it's Project for Predatory Student Lending, I think, is the PPSL. Yeah. So this has got all of the details that you need to know for where a borrower defense is, where it is in the process. The frequently asked questions, like the question about can I apply for consolidation, is in here, right? And yes, you can apply for consolidation and still be and not disturb your borrower defense claim, right? And if for some reason it doesn't go through, then your loans are now receiving the count adjustment maximum possible, and they're eligible for something like Save, where the FFEL program loans are not, right? So you can still consolidate your loans and not disturb the borrower defense application.
So on the Student Debt Center, how to access the student debt message board?
Yeah, sure. So depending on anywhere you are on the Student Debt Center, if you're logged in, and I highly recommend being logged in while you're doing this stuff, because then we can help more specifically answer your questions and the things that you're doing on here. There's a link up here in the nav bar that says Student Debt Message Board Area. And if you click on that, it'll take you into the message board area on VIN and VIN Foundation, and you can post, right? So it looks like somebody already did that during the session here. Oh, I don't know why it gave me an access denied there. That's kind of weird. I'll figure that out later. But this is where you would go. And if you want to post the discussion, there's a post button up there in the right word area. And if you want to, there's some instructions on how to post in the student debt message board area. If you want to post anonymously, there's a little anonymous checkbox at the bottom right above the post message button. So you give your discussion a title and post what your question is. Ideally, if you've already uploaded your student aid data file when you've gotten to this point, so we can see the details in the background, that would be helpful. If you've got a simulation that you've run, right? So if you run simulations and you want us to review what you're seeing, after you run a simulation, there's a save share button here, right? You can copy a link, a unique link to that simulation and paste it into your message board post. And there's no uniquely identifying information in that loan repayment simulation. So you'll still be anonymous, right? But it really helps us to see your student aid data file, which we can see in the background if you've uploaded it while you're logged in. And we can evaluate your student loan repayment simulation if you include the link. Right? So those things really help make answering your questions easier and quicker on the message boards.
If you are not an active VIN member, but you have login credentials and you do not see that link to the student debt message board area on the top of the student debt center, just let us know and we'll help you get access to that. That shouldn't affect many people, but there are a few.
Erica asks, how do you make sure the years of previous payments are being counted? Well, that's what the forgiveness count adjustment is all about. But when you're running simulations, you enter your best guess of your number of years in repayment in the years in repayment field, right? Through the Department of Education, through the studentaid.gov, you can't make sure of that yet, right? They're kind of in the process of doing that. And I know this is driving everybody crazy, right? But once we finally see the count, then it will all get factored in, right? Right now, we have to do some guesstimating and we can account for it in the loan repayment simulator, which is one of the reasons we built the loan repayment simulator, is, that's how you account for it, right? But once it's in your file, like it is for public service loan forgiveness folks, right? That's what's going to happen with account adjustment. Then we'll be able to all account for this stuff better, right? So that's how we're going to account for it going forward. I have not been on an income-based repayment plan in the past and have never consolidated and have been paying for the past 10 years. Would it be best to consolidate an income-based repayment plan ASAP? Probably, right? And this is, again, one of the benefits of the forgiveness count adjustment. Any repayment time that you've logged will be credited as forgiveness eligible, even if you haven't used a forgiveness plan in the past. Right. So, probably it's going to make sense for you to consolidate before the end of the month. It really depends on what your remaining loan types are. Right. But if you want to be sure that your loans are going to count towards forgiveness, then you consolidate before the end of this month. And even those past years that you weren't using an income-driven plan will be counted as forgiveness eligible. And then you can choose to use a forgiveness eligible plan going forward if it's likely that you'll reach forgiveness, or not. You can go back to using some other type of plan if you want. But it's better to bank that forgiveness time and have it in case you can use it than to not have the forgiveness time at all. Right. And determining the likelihood that you'll reach forgiveness, that's where the loan repayment simulator comes in. Right. We put in those details, the number of years you're in repayment, what your income is, your family size, your family information. That's all going to go into spitting out some numbers that'll either show that you're likely to hit forgiveness or not. All right, I currently have 2 loans, direct unsubsidized and direct subsidized. All the previous direct loans and FFEL loans have 0 principal, so I don't need to consolidate. Correct. That sounds accurate, right? So if you only have a direct consolidated subsidized and unsubsidized portion, and they both have the same date, right? It technically means it's the same consolidation loan. It's just that 2 subcomponents that we talked about earlier. You're set to receive that count adjustment. In that last example, if you switch from pay to save in 2025, does that mean your forgiveness will go from 20 to 25 years? Yes. Oh, last example. So you're talking about the person who is in pay as you earn, right? So, okay, great question. So this is the person who is in IDR profile 1, is using pay as you earn. And I talked about that it would be better if they were using save, right? And maybe not right away because they have a very beneficial monthly payment that may have been determined from way back before the pandemic forbearance benefits, and their anniversary date isn't until 2025. So when they're next due to recertify next summer, it would most likely make sense for them to switch to save. So yes, at that point, they're technically on a 25-year forgiveness timeframe as opposed to the 20-year timeframe they're on with pay. However, because they're eligible for the new version of IBR, the new version of IBR also has a 20-year forgiveness timeframe. So they can use save for up to 5 years, a maximum of 5 years, to have a lower monthly payment and benefit from the unpaid interest subsidy, but still switch to the new version of IBR before they hit that 5-year maximum in save, so they can hit forgiveness at 20 years as opposed to 25 years. Hopefully that makes sense, right? But even though they're giving up pay as you earn, they still have access to a 20-year forgiveness plan, but it may not make sense. It really depends on what their circumstances are doing 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road from now, right? It may make more sense for them to stick with save, even though the forgiveness period is longer, than to switch to the new version of IBR and receive forgiveness sooner, right? We're going to have to check in on their finances, 3 or 4 years from now to help them make that decision. But right now they can switch, or next year when they're due to renew, they can switch so they can benefit from the unpaid interest subsidy, which will keep their balance lower than it would if they stuck with pay. And I know we're kind of in fourth dimensional finance right now, but that's the key takeaway is for anybody in IDR Profile 1, you can use save for up to 5 years. You'll have a lower monthly payment, you'll receive that unpaid interest subsidy, and you could still have a 20-year forgiveness option because of the new version of IBR. Can those in IDR Profile 1 benefit for the one-time forgiveness? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, IDR Profile 1 just means that they're eligible for the new version of IBR, which means they meet the new borrower requirements. They were a new borrower as of July 1st of 2014. That was long enough ago. That was 10 years ago, right? You can still have forgiveness time to add to your balance depending on your history and still be in Profile 1, right? We've seen that recently. Right. So yes, you can still benefit from the account adjustment. And if you've maybe got health profession student loans or Perkins loans or, loans for disadvantaged students, all of those can be consolidated and benefit from the account adjustment, even if you're in Profile 1. All right. Samantha, I have 6 direct unsubsidized loans and 6 direct Grad Plus loans. From my understanding, I should not have to consolidate at this time. If they're all from vet school, then probably not, right? But it's not the loan types there, it's the history, right? As long as they all have the same time in repayment, the fact that they're all direct loans means that they will receive account adjustment. But if you want them to receive the maximum account adjustment, if they had different repayment timeframes on them, then consolidation would still be in order. Right. But if they're all from vet school, or you went directly from undergrad straight into vet school and never entered repayment on any of those direct loans, then you wouldn't need to consolidate. Yeah, and there's a good follow-up. So in that same context, Shelby asked, where do direct Grad Plus loans fit into all this? They're just a different type of direct loan, right? So if you look at the loan types, right, we've got unsubsidized, we've got Grad Plus, but the key is that they have direct in the name, right? The direct consolidation loan, direct Grad Plus loan, direct Stafford unsubsidized loans. That's the key linkage there. The direct loans are the most beneficial, right? Whether or not you need to consolidate depends on your history, right? In this particular case, this person's loans are all from vet school. They're all in that direct loan category. They're not consolidated, but they don't have anything to gain by consolidating. They don't need to consolidate. They're still going to receive the count adjustment, and it's going to basically mirror their graduation year, right? So 5 years of repayment time when their account adjustment is applied, whether they consolidate or not. So in this case, it doesn't make sense for them to consolidate because they're not going to gain anything, and the only thing that's going to happen is they're going to have their unpaid interest balance capitalized, get added to their principal. All right, anonymous question. As a 2004 grad, I am both in IDR 3 and 4. 2004 grad, you can't be in both IDR 3 and 4, right? So IDR, in income-driven repayment profile 4, means you have only FFEL program loans remaining, right? It means that you would only see a balance in this box, in the income-based repayment balance. That is this one, right? You cannot be in 3 and 4. You're either in 3 or 4. There is no overlap of the IDR profiles. That's kind of the reason why I thought it was a good way to differentiate among them. You can only be in one of those profiles. This is IDR profile 4. This means you should run to consolidate your loans, right? If you had numbers in here and in here, that's IDR profile 3, right? That means that you at least have some loans that are direct loans, because SAVE is only eligible for direct loans, right? But if you're an IDR profile 4, it means you have no direct loans, right? And that you should run to that consolidation application. Just to clarify, Elizabeth asked, you said the SAVE plan you can only be on for 5 years. So the 5-year thing, and this is why I really don't like talking about this when we're up against all of these deadlines, because it's so far in the future. But if you're in IDR profile 1, right? So if you have access to the new version of income-driven repayment or income-based repayment, sorry, figures, I can't find the one I'm looking for. There it is. If this is your profile, right, you have a balance in this IBR 2014 column. It means you have the option of using SAVE for no more than 5 years and still be able to switch to the new version of IBR 2014. It doesn't mean you have to, right? It just gives you the option to do it. And that allows you to reach forgiveness sooner rather than later, right? You do not have to do that, right? It's just an option available to you if it makes sense financially, strategically for you to do that. Yeah, these other questions I'm seeing here, how do we find the time that we've been in repayment, right? Again, you can only estimate it now, right? I use the loan history and your graduation date to give me a guesstimate, right? When the count is applied, then we'll all be able to see it. And how will you be able to find it? It should be in your file, right? It's going to be posted somewhere, right? It's either going to be in our student aid account. It's going to be in our file like they currently track for public service loan forgiveness. It should be available in our loan servicer account. So there's going to be a number of ways that we should be able to see that. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet, but I suspect it's going to kind of follow how public service loan forgiveness has been tracked, which means it's in your file and then you can see it. Let's see. Oh, let's see. Okay, I had asked, so Anonymous asked, I had asked this on the message boards back in March, but never got an answer. I was never on an income-based repayment plan. All the loans are Fed consolidated. Should I be selecting an income-based repayment plan now or after the forgiveness count goes through? If we didn't answer your question, then please post a new, ping us on the boards there in your discussion. So when you're in VIN, right, here's another little hack we can go through. When you're in VIN, if you hit Control M or Command M if you're a Mac folk, you'll get a My Activities thing that pops up. And you can go to your posts, your subscriptions, and as long as you don't have a crazy complex history within VIN where you're posting constantly, you'll see that student debt post in here probably relatively quickly, right? So that will take you to your student debt post. And if you post a ping in there or say, hey, I never got an answer to this particular question, can you weigh in on this? We'll look at it and do it again, right? I mean, I certainly didn't mean to exclude that if we didn't address that question specifically, but I don't have enough information in what you posted here to be able to answer that specifically. But in general, if you've already consolidated your loans, maybe within the last year or two, because you were trying to take advantage of account adjustment, and you're not yet using an income-driven plan, that's okay, right? Any repayment time right now counts as forgiveness eligible, right? Because the count adjustment hasn't been applied yet. But once the count is applied, currently scheduled to be by September 1st, for anybody who doesn't already receive forgiveness, once that count is applied, at that point, you have to be using an income-driven plan or a forgiveness-eligible plan to continue earning forgiveness credit, right? But right now, it doesn't matter, right? You can be in any repayment plan that you want, right? But we're getting really close to when that forgiveness count should be applied, which means if you're not in a forgiveness-eligible plan, you want to really think about getting into one. And because we're coming up against some phase-outs of plans, like pay-as-you-earn and ICR, if one of those is going to be your best available option, then you want to get in it before September 1st when the account is applied, because you may lose access to one of those plans that would have been beneficial if you applied for it before it was phased out, right? So that was fine before, right? But we're coming up against the deadlines where if you want to get into a forgiveness eligible plan, you may want to choose one before it gets phased out if that's the one that's most beneficial for you. All right, my repayment plan says standard. If I've been paying for 24 years and should receive forgiveness, do I need to be in an IG? Oh, so this is a perfect segue into that, right? So my repayment plan says standard. I've been paying for 24 years and should receive forgiveness next year. Do I need to be in an IDR plan to qualify for forgiveness? Not yet, right? But because you've been in repayment for 24 years, you're one of those folks who could very well benefit from ICR to satisfy that remaining year. But that means you have to apply for ICR before July 1st because it's going to be phased out, right? ICR had almost zero utility up until recently when the count adjustment was announced, right? For those folks who have a relatively low balance, I'm guessing with 24 years in repayment, you have a relatively low balance, and you may have a relatively high income because you're 24 years into veterinary practice, right? For those folks, ICR is an excellent option to satisfy that 1, 2, 3 years that you have to satisfy that forgiveness time, right? But ICR is scheduled to be phased out on July 1st, right? So the standard plan is fine right now, right? But after your count is applied, if that's not until September and ICR would have been your best plan, then you don't have access to it anymore. So you'll have to use a plan like Save, which may have a pretty high monthly payment depending on your income to satisfy that last year of repayment, right? So take a look at ICR before it's phased out at the end of this month here to see if that would be the best plan for you to switch into, even if you haven't received your count adjustment yet. All right, so I have 2 FFEL loans that I have been paying on for 25 years. When I input the information to consolidate these loans in the calculator, the payments will be more than I'm currently paying. Consolidate them, Lori. Again, run 2 FFEL loans that you've been paying on for 25 years. Your loan should be forgiven before the count. Run. I mean, seriously, run, right? I mean, if you've been in repayment for 25 years, get the loans consolidated. Choose whatever repayment plan that you need to get through the consolidation application, and your loans should be forgiven. And if you do have to make some payments before they actually forgive your loans, you should get those refunded on the new consolidation loan. Run, run, run to consolidate your loans. I graduated in 2009 and consolidated my FFELs in my second year of school and have been paying Navient since. Okay, so Navient, wrong loan servicer. So you were back in school during the time frame when you can consolidate your loans during school, but it was still during the FFEL consolidation loan period. The fact that your loans are still with Navient means you need to consolidate them again. Consolidate them into a new direct consolidation loan so you can get forgiveness credit for those. Right. So yes, there is something more you need to do. If you consolidated your FELs and they're serviced by Navient, there's still a FEL consolidation loan, which means that they're not eligible for the count adjustment unless you consolidate them before the end of this month. I have been paying since 2008 and I'm now at 60,000 left. I am one of those that recommended to consolidate if looking at if you want to do forgiveness. With just this amount left, should I still consolidate? Yeah, Katie, yes, absolutely. Right. I mean, if you aren't set to receive the forgiveness count, right, it's not so much the balance, right? It's the forgiveness count that you can earn and what would my payment be on an income-driven plan, right? And if you still hit forgiveness, so be it. If you don't, so be it, right? But if you miss the opportunity to get the forgiveness time, right, and then something happens that decreases your income in the not so distant future and you wish you had that forgiveness time logged, then it's gone, right? Get the forgiveness time, bank the forgiveness time, right? We can help you figure out if it makes sense to pay the loans back faster or head towards forgiveness after you've banked the forgiveness time, right? But if you miss the opportunity to bank the forgiveness time, the forgiveness isn't even an option, right? So again, focus here, bank the forgiveness time. If you aren't in a position to already receive that count adjustment, then consolidate your loans before the end of the month so you can at least get that forgiveness time. Okay, Sasha, this is I think it's a good question. So my studentaid.gov account has a notice that says at least one of my loans is not a direct loan. I consolidated in February with Mohila, and when I view the information, it appears that all are serviced by Mohila. It also says that my consolidation application is pending. I have been in repayment since March when approved, and I have been making payments. Should I be worried? So yeah, there's a little bit of a glitch again in the student aid system. Surprise, surprise, right? But this is particularly for those of you that it recognizes that you had, and I think it's a Perkins loan in this case. Even if you've consolidated those, they seem to want to say, hey, you could really benefit, which is cool, right? It's better that they err on the side of making you check than not check. But if you've already consolidated all those loans and the only balances you see now are direct consolidation loans, then there's nothing left for you to do, right? That's a glitch in the system that's still kind of picking up that you had that Perkins loan in the past, and I wouldn't worry about that. Right. So if you've already consolidated your loans, particularly within the last year or two, and they're fully consolidated and all you see left are direct consolidation loans, then there's nothing else that you need to do to receive that count adjustment. Let me see. Let's see. And I wish I knew the context of this one. Anonymous asked, in other words, should you pick the lowest monthly repayment plan each renewal year until you get to forgiveness? That depends on what that plan is, right? After the count adjustment is applied, in order for you to continue receiving forgiveness credit, it has to be a forgiveness eligible plan, right? Standard, extended, graduated are not forgiveness eligible, right? So right now that's cool, right? But after the count adjustment is applied, if you want to earn forgiveness credit to get to forgiveness, it's going to have to be a forgiveness plan, right? So if in that case, you want to pick the lowest payment available from forgiveness eligible plans, right? But if, it's hard to emphasize this enough. If ICR is gone and you switch away from it or you're not using it, that's not going to be an option for you any longer, right? So you may not be able to switch back and forth among those options very readily for those that are scheduled to be phased out. Christina, for public service loan forgiveness, I have 6 more years to complete, but should I be saving for the possible taxes in case politicians change the game and decide to hit us with a tax bomb? No. So public service, again, this one is a misunderstanding of the law. Public service loan forgiveness is tax-free by law. If you earn or reach the threshold to meet the requirements for public service loan forgiveness, there is no scenario where all of a sudden you're going to have to pay a tax on that. Right? Now, what could happen is that you switch away from public service loan forgiveness, and now all of a sudden you're making payments towards income-driven repayment forgiveness, and maybe you hit income-driven repayment forgiveness that could be treated as taxable income. In that case, that would be a reason to potentially save for a tax down the road. But if you don't see yourself working in anything other than nonprofits and public service loan forgiveness eligible employment, then you don't have to worry about paying a tax on what's forgiven. This is a good segue to Lacey's question. I've always heard once you reach forgiveness that you have to pay taxes on the remaining balances. Is correct. That's not correct, right? It depends, right? Public service loan forgiveness is not taxable. Any student loan forgiveness is not federally taxable now and through the 2025 tax year by law. Right now, what happens after 2025 for income-driven repayment, it remains to be seen. So if you're due to receive forgiveness beyond 2025 and it's not public service loan forgiveness, then you'll want to plan as if you do have to pay the tax until you know for sure otherwise. Right? So it's not always taxable, right? It can be taxable, right? It depends on the type of forgiveness that we're talking about and what Congress decides to do with that tax exemption that's currently in place. Let me see here. I'm going to start working my way from the bottom up because those are the people that are still here. Right. So I am a 2024 grad and did the student loan repayment simulator. The best plan for me looks like IBR 2014 or pay as you earn. I have direct grad plus loans, unsubsidized loans. When I went to enroll in pay as you earn, it said a lot of my loans were not eligible. Will consolidating my loans help with this? Yes, so this is unique to new graduates, 2024 grads. So thanks for attending and participating and asking a question like that. This is why we recommend that you consolidate your loans after you graduate. You cannot apply for repayment while your loans are in their grace period, right? You have to consolidate them in order to be able to end your grace period, and then they will be put into an income-driven plan. And if you're running the simulations, and IBR 2014 and pay as you earn are your best total repayment cost. And if you're in income-driven repayment plan profile 1, meaning you're eligible for the new version of IBR, then you should choose save. Right? You're going to get a very low payment for the first 12 months of payments in save. You'll receive the unpaid interest subsidy, so your loan balance won't go up. And then you still have the option to switch to IBR 2014 if you're in IDR Profile 1 before you reach year 5 of repayment. And your total cost will actually be less than what you're seeing in the simulator. Right now, we're working on trying to get a switch simulated so you can see what the costs are. But right now, if you're eligible for IBR 2014 and you're running simulations and you see that that's your lowest total cost, using save for 5 years and then switching is going to be even lower, because you'll receive the unpaid interest subsidy and you'll make lower payments for those 5 years. Your total projected costs will be lower. Right? So in that case, choose save. And then let's reassess before you get to 5 years in repayment. But consolidate, choose to end your grace period, which means you select the do not delay processing option and then apply for save with your consolidation application. So Moonwa asked, are all forgiveness, regardless of the type of repayment, are all not taxable upon death of the borrower? Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, if something happens to you, this is part of the benefits and flexibility of your federal student loans. If something awful should happen to you, you go away with a student loan balance. Your student loan balance goes away with you. It's discharged and it's not taxable. Let's see. Continue 2017 grad. All of its school loans and direct, I don't know what that, oh, okay, sorry, this is a two-part question. So I'm an anonymous 2017 grad, currently on the extended repayment plan. I have paid off 2 of 5 loans, still have one, and another, and the last 25,000. Thoughts on which repayment plan to continue with? Was trying to pay off quickly during 0% interest, but now not making much progress. Yeah, that's a tough one. It depends on what your income is. I generally don't recommend anybody use those extended repayment plans. Even if your goal is to pay the loans back faster, I would still do it using an income-driven plan, right? Because it sets your minimum monthly payment to your income. And then you can choose to pay more if it makes sense and your budget allows for you to do that. But this is exactly why I don't recommend those extended plans, right? So that's one we're probably going to have to look at more in depth in the boards, but it really depends on the details of your loans, and it's highly going to depend on your income and where you think your income's going to go in the next few years. All right, Maria asks, my goal is to achieve the public service loan forgiveness in 5 years. I graduated vet school in 2008 and consolidated 5 years ago. Will the forgiveness count change anything if I am working towards public service loan forgiveness? No, you can apply for or submit a public service loan forgiveness employment certification form after your loans are consolidated, and they'll readjust your count to reflect those past years that you've earned towards forgiveness. All right, Katie, I'm in IDR profile 3. Thank you. I have direct grad plus loans, consolidated loans, FEL loans. Oh, you've got a constellation of loans. All right. Yes. If you've got all those different loan types, Katie, direct loans plus FEL loans, depending on, unless you, so we looked at this scenario here in a recent one that I uploaded. If you have a combination of direct and FEL program loans, then it depends on the breakdown of those remaining loans, what percentage of them is in which bucket. If you have a break in the borrowing history, that one I can't answer here with that information, right? That's going to be one that we're going to have to look at on the message boards. And I can't find my example that I was looking at earlier that has all of that broken out in here. Sorry about that, but that one's not one that I can answer easily here without looking at your loan history in a little bit more depth. Ashley, if my undergrad direct loans early as 2004 were in deferment until I went to vet school, does that make them not eligible for the count adjustment? It depends on what kind of deferment that was. If it was an in-school deferment, then no. But if it was just economic hardship deferment and it was in deferment for more than a year, then you will get credit for that time under the count adjustment. Let's see. Abby, if you're still here, I have only one FEL Stafford subsidized loan left from 2007 balance, and the rest 200,000 plus is direct loans. All are loans from vet school I never consolidated. So that is enough information for me to answer, right? So if all of your loans were from vet school and only one is a FEL program loan, you can consolidate just that FEL program loan if you want to, right? I would, because again, this forgiveness count adjustment is super beneficial. It'll make that balance eligible for the SAVE repayment plan, which it, would be nice if you can get it in to that FEL program loan can only be an IBR, right? So if you consolidate just that FEL portion, you'll prevent your unpaid interest from getting capitalized on the bigger chunk, and you'll get that FEL balance to receive the same amount of forgiveness credit, and it'll also be eligible for the SAVE payment that you're currently making. So that would help to consolidate just that FEL program loan in your case. Income recertification question. Oh, that's all right. We haven't done that. I'm getting divorced and just filed married filing separately. When the divorce clears in 2025, how can I recertify income to reduce monthly payments? Do I need to wait until the next tax filing season? No, you don't need to wait. So the system has a way of handling this. If you're separated from your spouse, going through a divorce, and the divorce is not yet completed, and you haven't had a chance to file a return that indicates all of that, you can exclude your spouse's income from the calculation. There is an option for you to do that. So they'll ask you those questions. How did you file your most recent tax return? In your case, it was maybe married filing jointly because you haven't had a chance for that to finalize yet. And they'll say, has anything significantly changed with your income? You can say yes. And then it'll ask you, do you have access, reasonable access to your spouse's income? You can say no, right? And that will allow you to exclude your spouse's income from that calculation for your exact scenario, right? It's for those folks that are going through divorce and they don't have access to their spouse's income, and their spouse's income shouldn't be calculated or factored into that equation. You can do that, and there is a way to do that, and you don't have to wait. You can do that right now. All right. Okay, so Abby has a follow-up about the one FFEL program loan. But if it's just one FFEL loan left with a balance, what is there to consolidate? Yeah, great question. So yes, this is stumping a lot of people, right? People that have FFEL consolidation loans are like, wait a minute, what do you mean I need to consolidate? They're already consolidated. It's not the right loan type, right? You can take one loan. I get it. It doesn't make grammatical sense, right? A single FFEL loan, think of it as you're converting it to a direct consolidation loan, right? But the process that you're going to use is to apply for a consolidation loan, right? Even though you're only putting one loan in there, it's okay. It's still a direct consolidation loan. You're putting that one FFEL loan into a new direct consolidation loan. That balance is only going to be made up of that one FFEL loan. That's okay. Right? But that's the only way that you can get that FFEL into a direct loan, which makes it eligible for SAVE and the count adjustment. So yes, it's kind of syntax, right? It's terminology. But yes, you can consolidate one loan in a direct consolidation loan, and you can consolidate previous consolidation loans into a direct consolidation loan. Can we email the income signalment form instead of posting to the board? No, you can email it, but we're going to post it to the boards, right? That's just the deal here, right? That's how we learn. That's how we learn from each other, and it's how we keep track of the stuff. The email is a disaster, right? The message boards, we have way more checks and balances to keep us on track to make sure we don't miss anything. And it also allows you a place to return to, and we can address follow-up questions that you have. You can certainly request that via email, but you're only going to get a reply if we can post it on the boards and do the analysis there. And you can do it anonymously, right? The only people that are going to know who you are is Rebecca and I, right? The rest of the community does not, right? So that's why we have that option available. But no, we're not going to just answer your questions via email, because then nobody's learning from that, right? So you have to do it on the message boards. So the time I spent paying off those other loans do not count towards my payment count adjustment. Loans that are paid to zero will not be counted in the count adjustment. Loans that still have a balance will count in the forgiveness count adjustment. Let's see, maybe I'm misunderstanding. So if I get on a public service, if I get on a PLS, I think you mean public service loan forgiveness. So PSLF plan, which requires me being on an income-driven plan, correct. So if you're going to work towards public service loan forgiveness, you have to use an income-driven repayment plan. And plan to stay that way for 10 years so I don't get taxed on forgiven loans. I don't have to worry about a scenario that I'd hit income forgiveness tax before the 10 years. Okay, so public service loan forgiveness, just basic recap. So public service loan forgiveness is a benefit that you can earn if you're doing all of the right things. One of those right things is using an income-driven plan, right? Another thing is they have to be direct loans. We talked a lot about direct loans tonight. The other part is you have to be working for an eligible employer, right? 501c3, government, other qualifying nonprofit employer. If you do all of those things for 120 monthly qualifying payments, 10 years, you're eligible to have your loans forgiven tax-free. Because one of the requirements for public service loan forgiveness is that you're using an income-driven plan, you also have an income-driven repayment forgiveness clock ticking as well. Right? The income-driven plans have 20 and 25-year forgiveness clocks associated with them, depending on the plan that you're using. Right? If you hit income-driven repayment forgiveness before you reach 10 years of qualifying public service loan forgiveness, then yes, you could have to pay a tax on income-driven repayment. Right? It depends on which one you hit first. Right? So if you've been in repayment for a really long time and you've got a lot of income-driven repayment forgiveness, particularly under the account adjustment, and you just started working for public service loan forgiveness recently, you may hit income-driven repayment forgiveness before you hit public service loan forgiveness. In most cases, that's not true, but with the forgiveness count adjustment, that can very well be true. Right? So it depends on where you are in each of those repayment timelines. Here's a good one. Home buying has been difficult due to my large balance, so more than $350,000 of direct loans. Are you aware of any loan programs or mortgage lenders to make home buying possibility prior to loan forgiveness? It seems like most major banks I've contacted see vet school debt the same as other debt, regardless of veterinary employment, payoff history, great credit. That's not true, right? So, I mean, between my wife and I, we have more than $400,000 of student loans. We've got a few different mortgages. I've applied for financing for a number of different things. I have never had a bank even ask a second question about our student loans, right? So either you haven't found the right lender or there's something else going on there, right? So I would want to know a little bit more about your student loan history. It can be more difficult to get a mortgage if your minimum monthly payment is zero, right? And we have been living through a extended period where loan payments have been zero for a very long time, right? And that could be contributing to it. The banks do some really funny things. When they pull your credit report, they see a $350,000 balance and they see a $0 minimum payment due. Right now, if that's the case, then you should, the next time I would reapply for that mortgage the next time your minimum monthly payment is not zero. Right. But if it continues to be zero because your income is lower zero, well, that's a different story, right? That they're not going to lend to you if you have a low enough income to generate a $0 payment on your student loans, right? So that's where the issue comes in, right? But generally speaking, if you have a payment greater than zero using an income-driven plan, that can help you get a mortgage, right? Shop around and look for a different lender. I think we covered this one. If you are filing, okay, well, actually, I didn't cover this one. This is a good clarification on this one. But so the question in the panel says, if you are filing jointly and pass away, do your student loans also go away from that case, or does your spouse take on the debt? This is one of the great benefits of federal student loans. No matter how you file your taxes, your student loans go away with you. You don't have to file separately to get that benefit, right? Your student loans are tied to you only, right? So if something terrible should happen to you, the loans go away with you. Your spouse is not on the hook for them, right? That's why you really never want to take your federal student loans outside of the federal student system, meaning you refinance them with a private loan. Because in those cases, they generally entice your spouse or some family member or another cosigner to get the lowest interest rate possible because they know if something happens to you, somebody else is going to pay those loans. That is not the case with your federal student loans. If you get hit by a bus tomorrow, right, your loans go away with you. no matter how you filed your taxes. Right. So, that don't use that as a reason to either file your taxes separately or race to a zero balance on your student loans. Your federal student loans go away with you. Your spouse is not on the hook for them. All right. Elizabeth, if you're still here, so 2012 graduate, so am I. Consolidated last year, planning for forgiveness, happy to be eligible for SAVE instead of old IBR. My payment should be about $700 less on SAVE, but my loan servicer doesn't seem to have the info from the government due to delay. I don't know I'm not really sure what that means. I would try to apply for SAVE again. If your loans are already consolidated, and there has been some issue with them being able to process income-driven repayment plans, particularly those associated with consolidation loans, I would submit a new application for SAVE. Like that doesn't sound right, right? So check in on that one. Don't wait any longer, particularly if your payment on SAVE could be that much less. I would be forcing that issue a little bit. All right. Destiny, I see you answered a question there. That's not enough information for me to go on, right? The one FEL program loan suggests that you should consolidate, but it really depends on what the rest of your loan history looks like, right? So that's not enough information for me to answer that question, unfortunately. Sasha's back with a part 2. If I use my husband's income, my payment will be more than I can afford. Any suggestions? You can file your taxes separately. That allows you to exclude your spouse's income. But until you have a chance to have a separate tax return on file, there's not a lot you can do there, right? If you're married and you filed your most recent tax return jointly, an income-driven plan is going to take your spouse's income into consideration when they calculate that payment. Kimberly, I'm a 2023 graduate, graduated undergrad in 2018, made roughly 8 payments before starting vet school. I consolidated my loans and just got into the SAVE plan. It took about 6 months for that process, which is a long story, very, very long. I also switched from an Advantage to Mohila when I consolidated. Mohila has no record of my previously made payments. How do I make sure the payments I previously made are counted towards the one-time count adjustment? That's going to be something that you'll have to wait to see when the count is applied, right? The Department of Education is going back and doing that review, right? So if they determine that you meet the requirements to receive that additional time, it'll be applied when the count adjustment is applied. And if it's not, at that point, then you can make that case to the Department of Education, right? So after everybody's count adjustment is applied, I'm sure there's going to be some chaos that ensues that people are going to be like, I didn't get as much as I thought I would, and there'll have to be some process for reevaluating that, right? But you're not going to be able to know that until the count is actually applied. So you just have to wait a little bit longer, unfortunately, until you see that count to know if you need to go through a process like that. Maybe you'll get that count applied and you won't have to do anything like that. Anonymous asked, I'm looking to switch from the standard repayment to income driven, but don't know my future income. I have just started my own relief with first shift this week. I have about 4 to 5 years of repayment yet until forgiveness, so need to switch to IBR. My situation has changed dramatically since last year when I left my last job. We filed jointly, but my husband makes a lot more than me. I pay my own student loans. How do I get around his income? Okay, a lot there. So this is a good lesson. If your income decreases for any reason, you can submit to have your payment recalculated under an income-driven plan. If you're in the middle or in between jobs is an excellent time to apply for an income-driven plan. right? If you're in between jobs or you just started a relief shift and you don't know what your income is, you've got some pretty minimal income documentation to use, right? However, right, so that takes care of your income information. If the most recent tax return you filed is jointly, they're still going to require that you provide your spouse's income information. Right? So it may make sense for you to have a payment that's based on only your spouse's income information right now. Or when you get to the end of 2024, consider filing your taxes separately from your spouse. If there's a dramatic difference between your incomes, particularly on this 2024 tax filing year, it sounds like there could be, file separately and then certify or apply to have your payment recalculated while your income is low and your most recent tax return is now separate from your spouse. Right? So the timing there is kind of important. Right? And if you know these things are kind of coming up ahead of time, like if you know that you're planning to work to leave your job and you're not really sure what your income is, you may want to think about filing your taxes separately so you can configure your student loan payment to something that's much more beneficial for you, right? It does require you to think ahead a little bit, but you can use that to your advantage if you're following along in the timeline, right? So once I quit my last job, before I start anything new, I want to make sure that I apply for my income driven plan and tell them I don't have any income, right? Or my income is very low compared to what it was before, right? So I can have that payment be reflective of that new income situation. But if your most recent tax return is joint, then they're still going to want your spouse's income in that calculation. Yeah, great point, Christine. So 2002 grad with $26,000 in consolidated federal direct loans. On the simulation, it doesn't list ICR. We never added ICR to the simulator because nobody used it. And there was never a good reason to use it until recently. And ICR sucks. It is a really, really difficult plan to calculate a monthly payment for. So to retroactively go back and add that to the simulator now would be an extremely heavy lift. And it's due to be phased out in less than 2 weeks, 3 weeks. If you post on the boards, I can do an ICR calculation for you. But just based on the $26,000 balance that you provided, I suspect that ICR is going to be your best repayment plan, right? The ICR is great for those folks who have a relatively low balance and a relatively high income because it's loosely based on a standard 10-year plan payment times a multiplying factor that caps out once you hit a certain threshold. So the most it can be is 2 times a standard 12-year plan payment, which in your case, just ballparking here, is going to be about $400 a month or so. So if you go through the student aid website and select ICR as your option, I am confident that it will calculate that payment correctly for you. So you can see what that is using the studentaid.gov website, or post on the boards, and I've got a spreadsheet that I use to crank those payments out. And it's usually within a few dollars of what the Department of Education is doing. But we're not going to be able to add ICR to the simulator in any reasonable amount of time. So sorry about that. All right. Did I miss anybody's question here that was waiting for one? I've kind of lost track of where I am in that one. Michael, thank you for your kind words there. I mean, we're kind of 3 hours into this now, so I'm inclined. Yeah, I'm kind of inclined to call that the end. I hope we didn't.
Know where to find us.
Yes, I hope we didn't miss too many of those. But thanks everybody for all of the great questions and engagement. hopefully you got enough out of this to be able to assess some of these things yourself before the deadline. We'll do our best to try to answer your questions on the boards before the deadlines, but it's also quite possible that we might not be able to get to all of them before some of these deadlines. So we'll do our best, but we'll make a recording of this as well. So hopefully some of that earlier stuff that we did will help in the figuring what you need to do, if anything, before the end of this month. But thank you, Becca, for helping here and monitoring the Q&A panel as well. Anything else that I'm missing?
No, recording will be sent. Tony's Prezi with all the links will be sent. Somebody just asked if the Q&A will be in the recording. We don't typically release that, but maybe we could figure something out. We'll plot on that.
The problem, I mean, the questions we can easily get, but the answers are all verbally done, right? So it's tough to match that stuff up, but we'll see what we can do.
If there's specific questions that weren't answered verbally that maybe I got to, and you want to revisit that, let us know. We can figure something out there.
I will. There's one person that threw another one in about my last comment about ICR that I think is appropriate to answer here. So with low balance and high income, you said ICR is the best option, probably. Why would we want to do that instead of standard? Yeah, because the standard, quote, standard is not forgiveness eligible, right? So ICR is, right? So that's why if you want to make sure you're doing a forgiveness eligible payment, then ICR is probably going to be the best one, right? At least in the short term here. So before it's phased out. So that's why I mentioned that. But yeah, good. That's a good follow-up.
All right, so keep an eye out for that follow-up email. It will come from studentdebt@vinfoundation.org. And we will see you on the message boards. Thanks, Tony, so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Good night, everyone. Thank you.